Good morning, LBC Radio. This is Corey Rosen with the Story Podcast. Today I have a special guest, Britt Jarkowsky. Britt Jarkowsky is a local singer, actress, voice teacher, and musical director from Lancaster, PA, who has a love for every aspect of theater. Britt earned her BFA in musical theater with a focus on voice from Lancaster Bible College in 2021. She began her own ever-growing private vocal studio in 2019 and found a love for teaching. She has been blessed to work with companies such as Servant Stage as a musical director and camp staff on shows such as Bye Birdie, Seussical Jr., Once Upon a Mattress, Moana Jr., and Highschool Musical 2. And on stage at Servant Stage as on the Old Time Gospel Radio Hour 2016, 17, and 2021. She's been on Titanic and Prodigal. For Red Accordion Studios, she was a part of the Three Little Pigs. She's been a part of Lancaster Academy, Piercing Word, Creative Pursuits, Studio, Revival Productions as the understudy of Sandy Cheeks and Spongebob the Musical. She's also performed at Lancaster Bible College and Ephrata Performing Arts Center in Les Mis and Rudolph Jr. as ASM-vocal coach and orchestra conductor. She is currently playing as the understudy of Sandy Cheeks and ensemble with Revival Productions in Spongebob the Musical. She is super excited to be on the story to talk about all things theater education and the arts. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. This is awesome.
Yeah, no problem. So one thing I want to get started on is what inspired you to do musical theater? What show, what song, what was it that screamed, I want to try this. I want to do this.
When I was in third grade, we went and saw Seussical at the local high school that we live near. And their production was incredible, first of all. It was like one of the most amazing productions of Seussical I'd ever seen. And I remember sitting there and being like, I want to do that. I want to
Mm.
do that so badly. Um, However, I was quiet and introvert, even though I am at this point. But I was quiet and I didn't ever have the opportunity, to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, then it was 2 years later that I was homeschooled instead of going to school. And I joined a performing arts academy and started theater. So
So what was it like to do theater as a kid? Were you ever pressured into doing certain things you didn't want to? Was there ever like harsh rejection from these the directors? What was it like for you as a child?
I never remember any sort of pressure to do anything. My parents were always like, if you want to do this and you love it, then do it. If not, we're not going to force you to do it, which is great. As far as auditioning going, I never sort of, I think because I was young and at that point it was just fun. So the rejection didn't hurt. It was more
Mm,
so like it was so fun to just do it. And I guess that should, be our mindset even now,
right.
It reminds us that like, oh, that we do it because we love it. So that should be our mindset even now. But I don't remember any sort of rejection or anything like that. I do remember with the schedule, it was a little bit crazy just because I would be doing um, like homeschool in the morning, in the afternoon, then we go to choir. Um, and theater classes and rehearsals and all kinds of things in the evening. So it was basically like I was in school, but not really.
Mm.
Um, so it was a full schedule, but it was so cool, and it was not everyone has an opportunity to do that. I was just really really blessed and thankful to be able to do that. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
So you were homeschooled and did this theater throughout up to like high school, quote
Mhm.
unquote.
Yep. And then once I graduated, um, I took a gap year, and I actually was hired back by the academy that I graduated from, and I interned with my one of my greatest friends, mentors, directors, Bonnie Basso, and I she taught me to how to be a stage manager. I had stage managed a little bit before that, and she'd been like, "You're kind of good at that." I was like, "Okay, cool." So she taught me that whole year how to be a really good stage manager, and I stage managed for all of their shows that year. And then I also co-directed acting classes with her that whole year. So I didn't think I was gonna go into theater, however, after
Mm.
graduating high school at all. However, I did, which is great.
What was your alternative to theater?
I wanted to it was either going to be teacher, some type of teacher. I didn't have a specific kind of focus in anything, or I wanted to be a nurse. So it was one of those um, sort of, I don't know what I want to do. I wasn't the type of person to be like, I want to go to college right after high school, at all. So when I did my gap year, I went to England for a little bit and did some missions work with a family we knew in England. And I was there for a bit, and I considered staying in England and also like doing missionary work just full time. But then I came home, and I realized I was nannying at the time, and I realized that theater was the mission I was supposed to be in.
Side rant. What was the most culture shocking part of going to England?
Oh my goodness. Honestly, I think it was the fact that they wanted me to speak more than they were like, wait, say this word. And I'm like, what? Why? They're like, you just say it so weirdly. No, like you have the accent. I
Right,
don't. And they're
yeah.
like, no, like to us you have you
Right,
have
that's
it.
so funny.
So that was honestly the biggest thing. I grew up with so my great grandma is from England.
Mm.
So I grew up with a lot of British culture in general. So it wasn't it felt like home.
Really?
It really did. It's so weird. And somewhere I would go back any day. Any day. I'd just live there forever if I could, which I think I might soon. So
Oh,
you
that's
never know.
interesting. You never know.
Never know.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So back to the schooling.
Yeah.
You chose musical theater. What was the process of you choosing which college to go to?
So I actually didn't choose. I was doing I started taking voice lessons again, and my teacher encouraged me to audition for Servant Stage, and I was like, okay, whatever. So I was kind of in this like phase of I miss theater, so I'm gonna do this. I probably won't go to college for it. And then I was doing a show, and I met Mr. Felty there,
Mm.
and he was like, hey, like he introduced himself. He said, I heard you're like right out of high school and you're really awesome. So I don't know if you've ever heard of LBC. And I had taken Jumpstart classes during homeschool at LBC, and I was like, yeah, I know LBC. LBC was the type of place, though, however, in my Performing Arts Academy that everyone went to. So I was determined not to go to LBC.
Gotcha.
At all. I was like, nope, I'm going to be different. I'm not going to go to LBC just like everyone else. So when he said that, have you heard of LBC? I was like, yeah, I've heard of LBC. I grew up here. However,
like, I want to go to Millersville just like everyone else.
Yes, exactly. No, I would be far away. Far away. However, he was like, would you want to just audition for the program? We have auditions in a week. And I said, oh, maybe. And I remember I prayed about it, and I was actually nanny at the time. The little girl was like napping or something like that. And I remember praying at that moment, being like, God, I have no idea what you want for me. I literally have no idea. And I just need some sort of lead into the right direction. And no lie, 2 minutes later, LBC called me. And it was some type of someone being like checking in after my Jumpstart classes and asking if I would be interested in taking a tour of the college, or if I'd be interested in going to the college after high school. And they were like, we saw you did Jumpstart classes. You were on our heart today. Randomly, we were looking through a list and we pointed to your name and we wanted to call you. And I was like, whoa. And I even shared with her, I said, 2 minutes ago, I was praying because I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. And she was like, well, you can take this as a sign if you want. I said, I think I should. So I auditioned literally like 5 days later, and I was accepted. There was like 3 of us that auditioned, and I was the only one in the group to get in, which was crazy to me. And yeah, I was offered like good scholarship, and I was really thankful. And so I was like, all right, well, I guess that's right. That. So there was no sort of college planning. There was no sort of like the hype of applying to colleges, seeing what I get, accepted to or denied. There was no sort of thing like that, which is, kind of sad because, people enjoy that, but it was exactly how it needed to be. So it was great.
There's something weird about the journey to LBC that I've noticed among a lot of students. The way I met LBC was I went to my youth pastor or my youth group, and he was just randomly like, "Yeah, by the way, there's this you're graduating high school, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah," and he was like, "Well, there's this college fair going on at Salisbury Christian School." I'm from Salisbury, Maryland.
Okay.
And this place I've never been to. I didn't go to Salisbury Christian High School. And he was like, "You should just go check it out." And I was like, I guess okay. It's a Christian school. I wasn't that big in my faith at that point. But I was like, you know what? I do want to get out of here. I was in a very bad relationship at that point, and I wanted to get out. And one of the ways to get out of there was by moving 3 hours,
Mm-hmm.
or at least out of the place. I didn't know it was gonna be LBC at that time. But I just randomly walked up, and I looked like the deer in the headlights. I had no idea what I was doing. There was Karen was there. LBC was obviously there, and all these other Christian universities. And I was originally kind of set on Karen University because they had like
Okay.
a music engineering degree, and I was like, I like to do music. At this point, I had never composed anything.
Wow.
Right? Yeah. Some people think I've been composing all my life. No, the first time I ever composed something was technically the summer between uh, high school and LBC.
Mm.
But the first time I like actually like legitimately sat down to do something was at LBC.
Okay.
So, but I don't know what about LBC's admissions team or like recruiting team, but they're just a step up above everybody else.
Yeah.
It's incredible the amount of connection they establish with you, and they keep with you throughout your college career. I still know Rosie Lammy, who was my financial advisor throughout there. I like the fact that I remember her name still to this day. I after like 2 years. No, I guess it isn't 1 year. Time shorter than I thought it would be.
Yeah,
But
it's only been a year.
it's only been a year, yeah.
I know. It feels so much longer.
It does feel so much longer. But I mean that just goes to show how much of an impact they have on you.
Yeah.
It's really amazing all the quote unquote supernatural happenings of how people get to LBC.
Mm-hmm.
So you came to LBC, and what happens then? What is your next big thing from LBC
You mean after LBC
or during LBC? During LBC, was it hard to fit in? Did you already know some of your colleagues?
Yeah, I knew quite a few people just from the academy I grew up in. There were people here that I had known, not super well, but that I had known. It didn't. So the group I came in to, my freshman group. Now I graduated. I was here for 5 years instead of 4.
Oh,
So
gotcha.
the group I originally came in with was like all my best friends now, like Sam, Richard, Tori,
Yeah.
all of that. Actually, Tori wasn't a musical theater major. Anyway, but our group was apparently the first, like we were the biggest class to come in yet for musical theater, and we were the most obnoxious apparently, and the most groundbreaking in the sense that we wanted to push the program, and we really did try, and sometimes it wasn't with the best attitude probably, but there was a lot of changes within our first freshman year that were really, really good. They were really awesome. The dance program was completely new from freshman year to like the end of freshman year, beginning to end. The dance program was completely new. We had a new teacher. We had just all kinds of new aspects to the acting classes, and it was just the type of thing that we were honest with everybody, that we were like, hey, like we would like more of this, or this is not okay. So I can't imagine as like, the MWPA advisors are like, what is this group? They're kind of the worst a little bit. No.
Well, because it got to the point where there were suggestion boxes everywhere. And I guess that's because of you guys.
Yeah, pretty much. Yep. They literally always kid that our class was the first one to be like just blunt about everything, which is great.
Which is great. Yeah.
Yes, but it was just, a big difference. And we, as a whole, really got connected to the upperclassmen really fast. I feel like it always takes to like the spring semester to at least to kind of be connected with the upperclassmen. It takes the musical to kind of be like, oh, now
Right.
we're
Now we're
friends.
friends. Yep.
However, it was so fast. It was literally a couple weeks later that like all the upperclassmen were like, yeah, now the freshmen are best friends with us. And like they apparently were kind of intimidated by us. We were intimidated by them. There was just all this like
All this social
really weird
stuff,
social
yeah.
cues that were happening. But we all became super close so fast, which was so lovely. And then the musical happened, and the musical really solidified, everything for the program in general. Hello Dolly was one of the most fun shows I've ever been in. It was my freshman show. It was still probably my favorite show to this day that I've ever done. So yeah, freshman year was interesting, and it's obviously I feel like freshman year is a ever growing time in your life, and
Absolutely.
you go from one friend group to like your actual friend group type situation. But and it's a whole new world, and you're getting to know yourself a lot. But yeah.
So, what's it like to mingle with people you never know? Because if you've never been involved in musical theater, you get to know people in all sorts of ways. So, what was it like to be vulnerable to these new group of friends, um, dealing with all the stresses of school, tech weeks, and all of this other stuff that musical theater majors have to deal with? What was it like to be able to open up and kind of let other people into your life?
I feel like musical theater in general, you get very close very fast because you have to be so vulnerable in the moment. And this is something I tell my students all the time, in order to learn, you have to be willing to be vulnerable, and you have to be willing to mess up in front of each other and just challenge yourself. And you're not going to get better without messing up. So that was something that was really instilled in us. And because we got to know each other so well, so fast, it really helped us all grow so much. And as a group, as individuals, it was amazing. So it was never a problem. It was never a like, this is really, obviously it was scary at times. But it was so nice to be able to have this group of people that you were so close with. And you remained close. Like we all remained close, and even to this day remain close. That's just how tight it was. However, we do joke that because we're so close, and we're in the same building 24/7 together, like that's when drama starts happening. That's when you kind of get annoyed with each other because you're seeing each other every single second. So making sure to take the space that you need, knowing yourself when you're really like, I need to leave this chapel right now, and take space from the people that I see every second, not because I don't love them, but because, we are so vulnerable and do so many weird, vulnerable things in acting classes that like people are like, you have to do that in acting. And we're like, yeah, you have to do that. You just talk your inner monologue, and everyone knows exactly what you're thinking in that moment because they have, you have to learn how to put that on stage and how to communicate that. So it was always a lot, but you learned. I feel like freshman year was the time that we learned to take space when we needed to and push ourselves when we had to.
So you had to vocalize your inner monologue.
It was one of the many things, yeah.
What was there ever a person that didn't have inner monologue?
Me, yes.
You don't have an inner monologue.
Sometimes I don't. I literally was talking about this with someone the other day. They were like, what are you thinking right now? I was like, I honestly am not thinking anything. And sometimes I just don't. They're like, that's not true. You do. I don't. They were
That's
like,
so
all right, so
interesting.
as soon as you like think something, you have to talk. And I'd be like, I'm not thinking anything in this moment,
Right.
And sometimes, depending on the day, depending what happened, once you get started, sometimes there would be like a prompt, be like, okay, think about your day, and then as soon as you go. Sometimes, the biggest thing that was actually helpful that we did in acting class was we had our dream journal is what it was called, and we would literally write. We would just start writing. Like you didn't think, you didn't try to write about something, you put your pen on the paper and you just started writing to see where it went. And then you could see exactly like, oh, I didn't even know I was feeling this way about this situation. Oh, I didn't even know this was affecting me
So like
at
writing
all.
your subconscious
Yes,
almost.
literally. And, in acting class, sometimes we would do it out loud, but it was really more helpful for you as an individual to write it down and be like, whoa, I can't
Right.
believe that's exactly what I was thinking, and being able to identify. Sometimes acting class literally was like therapy. We literally joke. We're like, we literally feel like we're doing group therapy right now,
It
because
sounds like
we
it.
have to get to
Yeah.
know ourselves so well to be able to healthfully be on stage in another character, right?
Mm-hmm.
And be able to put ourselves in that character's shoes. So we have to know ourselves so well in order to be able to do that successfully and in a beautiful way, that the acting classes so many times felt like we were just getting to know ourselves and getting to know our little ticks and what makes us think and what makes us react. And yeah, it was crazy.
So having to know yourself, what is one of the things that surprised yourself when you found out about it? Like, or what? I guess another question
Mm.
could also be what something about yourself makes it challenging to mold into a different character,
Mm.
or are there such challenges for you?
None that really pop in my head right now. No, I don't. I don't think so.
That's good.
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting that sometimes you don't have an inner monologue. Can you picture stuff like if I said a red apple? Can you picture that in your
Yes,
head?
I
Okay.
see things more than. However, I'm a like writer through and through. I prefer to write down anything than drawing. I can't
Mm,
draw, but however, I see and picture.
that's cool.
Yeah.
I can do both. I definitely have an inner monologue, and I definitely can see a red apple right in my brain right now.
Mhm.
It's but it's always mind-boggling to me because I wonder how do you read things then without
Mm.
an inner monologue?
Yeah.
How do you, because I would read it to myself,
Hmm.
and in my head,
Yeah.
reading silently. They're always like read quietly, but some people can't do that.
Hmm.
So that's always been mind-boggling to me. So we were talking about performing healthily
Yes.
a little bit. How do you keep a positive mental attitude throughout all the stresses of? Do you want to go ahead and like outline what a tech week is like?
Sure. Yeah. So I just finished a tech week, obviously, like a
Mm-hmm.
week, 2 weeks ago. Um, and tech week is honestly one of my favorite weeks. It's crazy. It's absolutely insane. However, it's the week that I feel like everyone gets to know each other
Mm-hmm.
even more. It's kind of like a step every in a more vulnerable, challenging place, but it's everybody just connects so well, and you're at the point where you're just playing, right?
Right.
So in rehearsal, you're trying to memorize, you're trying to learn your lines, you're
It's
trying to like,
adjusting to the
yes,
character.
you're blocking. Yes, once
Mm-hmm.
you're on stage,
You
that's
are the
mostly
character. Yeah.
solidified. Obviously, as a character on stage, you are going to keep getting more solidified in your character,
Mm-hmm.
and more solidified in what you're doing on stage. However, during tech week, you're already on have a level of foundation there. So you can just play with your cast and you get to know each other cue to cue. Some people hate cue to cue. So cue to cue is basically um, whether it lasts 2 days, whether it lasts a day, a couple hours, you are basically completely silent, which I think is why I love it, because everyone's just completely silent and just like basking in the presence of the theater and presence of each other, which I find so beautiful. And I don't know why I find it so beautiful, but I do. And you start from the top and they say, okay, go to your first spot for the
Okay.
first scene.
So it's like blocking cue to cue.
Yes, and so
Gotcha.
then you stand there, they set the lights, they set whatever, they spike things. Okay, go to your next spot. Okay, they do the same thing, and it's hours of that. And you're standing there quietly, and you're standing there. Sometimes you don't have to be as quiet, but um, in most of the theaters I have worked in, it's more so, okay, this is the time where this is for your tech people so that they can serve you just as much as,
Mm-hmm.
they need that. So it's my favorite thing. I don't know why. But in LBC, we used to play this game called Sugar Bowl because some people couldn't be quiet. So Heather would say, it was Heather Greenberg, she would be like, all right, we're going to play Sugar Bowl now, which is basically the quiet game. And whoever is quietest gets a treat basically in the end.
Okay.
So basically, we were like children who wanted a treat. And that's what we would play.
Did it work?
Oh yeah,
Oh
for
yeah.
sure. Yep. Yes.
Oh, that's so funny.
Some people be like, nah, I don't care, but that's whatever. Yep. So I love Tech Week, and obviously the hours are long. They're like 10, 12-hour days most of the time. And you're running the show, you're adding a new element every day. So, first you added lights, then you add sound, and then costumes and props and set that you've never seen and never climbed on or never like touched, and you have to just be expected to go out and do this thing. But that's I feel like the most fun part of theater, just more and more things being thrown at you. And you're expected to just keep going, and it's so fun. Obviously, the days get long, very long, and at the end, we're all very tired, and then you're expected to do a whole weekend of shows, and you're like dead to the world. But you have this like theater adrenaline, and again, if you love it, then it's the best thing in the whole world.
Right.
So it's worth it.
What was it like to balance theater and then balance homework?
Oh, it was a lot. There were days that homework did not happen, depending on the show, depending what role. There were days homework did not happen. Thankfully, some professors were really, really kind about it. Some professors were not
very kind.
And they would be like, nope, this is extracurricular. And we're actually, no, this is our major.
Yeah, right.
This is what we're going to school for. This is what
required.
Yes. So there was definitely a balance of finding the professors that were like, oh yeah, you're going to school for this. That's for that specific thing. That's fine. Focus on that for the week. Get it to me by the end of the weekend. Great. Thank you so much. There were some professors that were like, no, there's no excuse. You need to get it in, and it's just a show. I'm like, yes, but it's also what I'm going to school for. So it's a little bit of a different thing.
It's not like I'm going to Sermon Stage and doing it.
Yes, exactly.
It's an LBC production that is put on by LBC actors for the major of musical theater.
Yep.
So that is literally not extracurricular. This is literally my class.
Yep. Exactly. Yep. This is also my homework.
Yeah, this is also my homework in addition to your doctrinal statement.
Exactly. Yes, that I will not have time to write. Yes, exactly. Even though it's just as important in that moment, it needed to wait. And focusing on mental health as well. Sitting there, I remember there were so many times I would get up to the top of the chapel after like a long rehearsal run. You'd get out of costume, you still have like half your makeup on, your hair's a mess, and you'd be like, I have to sit here and write this huge Bible paper, and I'm not, in a mental place to do that. I'm not in a spiritual place to do that. I'm not wanting to do this in the moment. So it's like, I'd rather get the points taken off to put it in the next day than write this paper that's
kind of
trash. Yeah, and doesn't mean anything to me. I'm not going to learn anything from it. I'd rather go home, sleep, mentally prepare, refresh, and then move on. Yeah.
So being an LBC student, you had no choice but to also take Bible classes.
Correct.
Was there any you had mentioned, you were talking about being hesitant to write Bible passages because we had our Bible papers, doctrinal statements, etc. Because there are, granted, I do feel like at LBC there's a lot more graceful, merciful teachers than there are hardliners.
For sure.
Because one shout out I'll give Daniel Carver.
I was literally about to say that. Dr. Carver, so good.
So good.
Yeah, just get it to me whenever. Like, yeah, I love you.
Dr. Sidebotham is also like that. Very good as well.
I should have failed so many Sidebotham classes.
Absolutely. Yes.
He should have failed me so many times, but he didn't. He gave me all the grace in the entire world,
Literally
the time.
In the entire world.
Yep.
That's all.
Yep.
And he's an awesome person too.
Yes.
But was there at any point, did you just start hating to have to do the Bible?
Yes, actually. And it was always a guilty feeling. You're like, I really would like to have this burning passion to open my Bible right now and write this doctrinal statement or write this, dig through this psalm and take it apart. And I would like nothing else than to love doing that. However, I do feel like because of the expectation of the double major, there is this little bit of, I love Jesus and I love the Bible. However, it's not my real major, and I didn't, this is
I didn't choose this.
Yes, I didn't choose to have a Bible major. I did by going to LBC.
Yes.
I did choose that. However, I'm not planning to become a pastor. I'm not planning things like that.
This is my
not
goal.
that it didn't help. As a teacher, it's helped. As a spiritual life, it's helped. Not that it didn't help. However, for the longest time, it was like, I wish this was a minor and not a major. That I could have a musical theater major, and I could minor in Bible. There was also so many music classes that I wanted to keep taking. Like, I wanted to take conducting too. I wanted to take another theory. There were so many things another piano that I couldn't fit in because we had so many other Bible classes. And I was here for 5 years and I still couldn't fit anything in. And I took 4 summer classes. So there were so many things that it was frustrating at times to be like, oh, I literally don't have time to get better at this skill that I'm going to take after college, versus because I have to take Old Testament 1, like Old Testament 1. Yep, exactly. Yep. And fill out these maps, Yeah,
right. That's one thing I've realized. If you are at the MWPA department, period, I'm sure this is the same for other majors too, but you are literally signing yourself up for full credits every single semester, more often than not.
Yes.
Because people don't account for ensembles, because we had to take a 4-credit and 8 4-credit and then 8 non-credit.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and that is a lot of time, especially chorale isn't that bad because chorale, it's rather simple. You don't have to do much practice outside of chorale.
Mm-hmm.
However, for like instrumental ensembles, there's expected practice outside of that, and for your vocal, you have to at least do 7 hours a week, and that's expected.
Yep.
That's something I did not do at all. One of the things I kind of regret, to the point where I almost got kicked out of college because my percussion grade was so bad.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many other, is it true that the shows only count for 1 credit?
Yep.
And there you're literally having 3 it should be more credits in my opinion.
Yes, for sure. And we're there 2 weeks earlier than everybody else, all day. Now that has changed a little bit. It used to be we were there 2 weeks. We would get there January 1st, and we were there. I think it was a 2-week period.
It was for at least Ruth.
Yes, yeah. And then so it was like Hello Dolly, Mary Poppins, Ruth. Wow, I can't think of anything else. Bye Birdie. There was we had a 2-week process. We were there all day. It was so fun. It was literally my favorite 2 weeks in the whole year. We would look forward to it so much. It was just the musical theater majors on campus by themselves. The sports people were also there doing their thing because they came back early too. However, no one would talk, so we would just have our own little world of just musical theater and the chapel to ourselves. It was so nice. It was awesome. But
so talking about being only musical theater people, there is this, at least in the MWPA, there is the musical theater group, the worship arts, and everybody else.
Yep.
How did you ever try to bridge that gap, or were you just happy to just settle with your group?
Yeah. Yep. Freshman year, there was this joke that the left side of the chapel,
that's right.
The left side of the mezzanine was musical theater and vocal performance. Mm-hmm. The right side was worship arts. And it wasn't a joke because it literally what it was. Yeah. It's what it was.
We were self-segregating.
Yes, we really were. And walking across the bridge to the bathroom or something like that, like it'd be like the stairs. Yeah, why are you coming over? Or to the practice rooms or class? Like we would rarely go to that side because it was just, that's the worship art side. This is our side, which is so weird.
Yeah, it was so weird.
So weird because we're all music majors, and in Forum we would all join together until we split up a little bit. But later, originally, all music majors, for Forum, were all together, instrumentals, all kinds of things. So it was before, LBC grew a lot, which is really great for the program. But there was this huge part that the worship arts was a separate group. Now, my friend group, my first semester, I had my musical theater friends during the day, and then my roommate who was a basketball major, and then all her friends were worship arts. So I would hang out with them most of the time, and I had all these worship arts friends. So I felt like I was in like two different worlds the whole time, and I didn't know what to do with myself. And then the musical happened, and I was with the musical theater people then, and it was like looked down upon then. It was like, Britt, you can't, like,
Really?
what are you, it was these looks of like, why are you hanging out with the
The
them?
others.
The others, yeah, like this is the
The right
musical theater
side.
group now.
Yeah,
Like
you have
you're
to be
part of the group now, you know? We're like,
it's like Mean Girls
whoa,
almost.
yes, that's kind of what it felt like. However, years later, obviously I was here for 5 years, which is so long. I would say my senior year, my super senior year, I will say, so it was my 5th year. It was the first time that I felt that there was no bridge.
Well,
There was no there. Everybody
Yeah.
was one, which was so cool, and we had never experienced that at all in the MWPA.
My theory is because they got rid of the furniture on the other side.
Yeah, that's true. We couldn't.
There was
Oh
no
my
way to
word.
sit.
Yes, maybe that's why. I don't know. I don't know if it was the fact that I don't know. We obviously changed the name from
Yep.
WPA to MWPA. There was this sense of then I think a little bit more of a we're one group.
Because there had been plenty of talks of being unified, and because there was a lot of drama that happened
Yes.
over those years, and there was constant talk. Granted, I was never part of it. I was kind of outside of it.
Yeah.
There was in my mind it was the theater students, the rest of the people, and then there was me, the only composition major on campus.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, is there? There's people saying stuff about it. And I'm like, what is going on? But so there was a lot of talks of this um conflict.
Yep.
And I don't know if that was a part of the musical theater and worship arts. Would you say that's
I think there was definitely some. I wouldn't say no one. I don't think anyone disliked each other. There was just this thing of we're not together and we don't want to be, and it was weird. I will say the first 3 years here at OBC felt like we were ourselves. We were one tiny little group, of musical theater majors. In general, it was more competitive,
right?
way more competitive. Even in our circle of musical theater, like we were competitive with each other. There was a lot of cutthroat moments with shows, with classes. There was just a lot more sense of, yes, we're all in college together, but this is the career we're going into, and we have to be ready to like cut each other's throats for this role, which is not,
Not
healthy and not what we wanted. Right. And it wasn't until I think my senior year, so my 4th year, that felt different. And my super senior year was when it felt like completely over. Like we were here to have fun. We were here to learn together and challenge ourselves, even if we weren't perfect. There was just this whole sense the first 3 years here that we had to be perfect, and if we weren't, we were not meant to be here type of situation, which wasn't great. But I was really glad to see a huge change, and I even see now, being an alumni coming back, I'll like walk around the chapel, and it's completely different.
It is completely different. Like, because I'm just thinking about the friend groups that I know now. They are very inclusive of all different majors, and it's something I didn't really witness until the end of my college career as well, where I could actually go over to. Granted, I tried to break into the musical theater side as a freshman, and it didn't really work out as well. But I because in my mind, I'm just like, we're all colleagues here. We're gonna. But I did realize that it's a clique, and you have to be a part of that clique. You have to be a part of the show in order to be in that clique.
Correct.
But I would do it anyway. The same, like trying to reach it because of my musical. I had to, kind of had to, and I think I made it into a little bit of circles. I had meaningful, or what I thought to be meaningful relationship with Richard Thomas.
Yes.
And a few other people. But it was the latter years where like Sarah Ziegler came in, and I feel like she had a lot to do with bringing everybody
She
together.
did. I love her so
Yeah.
much. She's one of my best friends. She really did. Which is just, it's part of her personality. And I will say there, through the years, there are certain people that had different mindsets, and it's, you love them, but you're
Mhm.
thankful that, they were gone, because you felt like you could be yourself, or you
Right.
felt like you could be more accepted, and you didn't have to be perfect, and you didn't have to.
Watch your words.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So that was crazy times, but I'm glad it's so much better.
It. I'm very happy about that too. So we have been talking about a lot of college years. I want to
Yes.
talk about a little bit more of your after college years. What was your first big break outside of college?
Um, well, I was doing some stuff with Servant Stage. I've done stuff with Servant Stage for a long time though.
Mm-hmm.
So my first big break was was offered to be assistant music director for Les Mis at Ephrata Performing Arts Center. And at that point, I was assistant music director and vocal coach. And I was working under this lady named Cheryl that has been at EPAC for years and years and years and years. She's an incredible pianist. And she basically said Les Mis is a humongous show. I can't do this alone, and I need someone who's a singer to push these kids, because I'm a pianist, I'm a musician, but I'm not a singer, and I need someone to be a singer and to help me out. So one of my friends was like, "Hey, this job opened up. You should apply for it." I was like, "Okay, cool." And he works at EPAC, and so he was like, "You should get on that like now." And I was like, "I might as well try, sure."
Mm-hmm.
I had been, teaching voice for a while. I was like, I guess that could be good. I'm not a full pianist, so if she's there playing piano, I'm perfectly content. So I put my stuff in, and then apparently they interviewed me and a few other people, and then I was called that I got the job, and I was so excited. It was like one of my first things that I was gonna do outside of um, everything. It was a total new group of people.
Mm-hmm.
I knew a few people from EPAC, but it was just a total new theater, new group, and I was so excited for that, just because I was at a place where in my life where everything was kind of a new beginning, and so we started. I think in October was when we started Les Mis, and we opened in December, and we did every weekend in December. And then it was a little bit later in the process that they were talking about the orchestra, and how normally at EPAC, the music director plays the piano
Mm-hmm.
and in the orchestra and kind of conducts, and when they need to. However, they were like, this is a humongous score, and there is so many meter changes constantly
Yeah.
in the
Yep.
music, that they were like, I think we need someone to actually conduct it, and I think it'll make a difference. So there was talk about it, and they were like, did you take conducting? And I was like, I did. I really, really love conducting. It was one thing that I wish I could have, taken a lot more classes of. And I was like, I would, if you need that, I'll do it. So it was kind of up in the air for a little bit of like, maybe that would be a good decision, maybe not. We've never had just a conductor before. And then they decided that it would be good. So I got started, and I would tell my students that people would think I was crazy, because I worked at Starbucks in the morning, in the afternoon I would go to Panera before rehearsal, and I would sit there and conduct. I don't know why Panera every time, but I would sit there in a booth and just with my AirPods in and just conduct the entire time. And people would look at me weird, be like, what is this crazy lady doing? Why is she just sitting here conducting? But it was, I think, the hardest I've ever worked on anything in my entire life. It was also the most rewarding thing I've ever done, theater-wise, in general.
Why?
I don't know. It made me want to go get my master's in conducting.
Really?
Yes.
So it was that impactful.
It was that impactful, and it was that moment where, so I grew up in, obviously I talked about the Lancaster Academy, and we were in choir, and one of the best directors I've ever had was Mrs. LaSala, and she just had such an impact on me in choir years that I had always wanted to conduct, and I didn't think I could. I didn't think it was like something I would be capable of doing ever. So once I started, I was like, oh, I can do this. Like, I have a strong foundation, and I have to trust myself that I can do this. And things I had questions on, I reached out to people that I knew, could help me. The orchestra itself for Les Mis was the most supportive group of people I have ever experienced in my entire life. They were so kind, and they knew that it was my first time ever conducting an orchestra. We had I think 13-piece orchestra, and they knew it was my first time, and I basically told them the first rehearsal, I said, I need you guys to be blunt with me. I want you guys to tell me, hey, this downbeat's not clear. Hey, your pattern for this is weird. I need you to do this. Hey, I need you to do that. I wanted them to be completely honest with me, and they were. And in the end, I'm not a crier. Even in shows I'm in, I don't cry afterwards. I cried pretty much after every show of Les Mis. It was just one of those things where you're like, I would like to do this for the rest of my life, because it was just that incredible of a experience. And the kids the students in Les Mis were just so, it felt like an adult show, because the cast was so talented. And the reviews we got and everything, it was one of the best shows like EPAC has ever done. And the reviews we got for the orchestra in general were completely different than normal, apparently. And they just said the orchestra was more clear, more precise, more just clean in sounding in general ever. So it was one of those things where I was like, wow, like I did that, like that was something I did, and I felt so proud that I was able to do that, and that I received it was one of those moments where you're like, oh, my major, I'm really glad I went to college, like I'm really glad that I got I don't know, the experience I did in order to do that. And it was weird because everyone was like, your first big thing is conducting an orchestra.
An orchestra, by the way.
Yes, not a musical. You're not,
you're not doing what you went to college
yes,
for.
You're conducting a musical. And apparently Dr. Bigley told his students that in conducting the other day, or a couple weeks ago, they were like, I guess being a little bit lazy of like, well, I'm a musical theater major. I'm not going to conduct ever. Yeah. And he was like, actually, maybe you will, because maybe your first big break will be conducting Les Mis. Right. So you don't know. And they were all like, oh, yeah, you're right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, you never know. And it's one of those things that I, as a person, am grateful that I love every aspect of theater. So I am perfectly content being backstage and conducting an orchestra. I'm perfectly content stage managing a show because I love it. And it's great. I'm perfectly content music directing and being on stage. And I think if you find that mindset of, I love this theater aspect of everything in general, then it makes it so much more impactful to you as a person and to other people, because they see, hey, she could do this. She also could do this, and she can do this. Like, so there it is. She has this. In lessons I talk about, we need to find we need to get this strong foundation, and then you build up from there, right? And you have all these little boxes that you have to fill, and as you keep going and getting more skills, even after college, like there's so many things I still want to learn and be able to do. I want to be able to play piano so clearly that, like, that's one thing in music directing world that's gonna keep me back, because I can't look at a score and just play it, And it's something that I took piano lessons as a kid, but I was lazy. It's one of those things that you're like, if I wasn't lazy, imagine how far I could have gone.
Especially as a kid.
Yes, exactly. Imagine how far right now I could be going as a music director if I wasn't lazy, right? And in college, there was moments where I'm like, wow, imagine that performance could have been so much better if I just practiced 10 more minutes. If I just didn't choose to go out with friends and I practiced just a little bit more. And, in the moment, you're young, you're dumb, and you want to just do whatever. And obviously, you want to be a kid. You want to be a college student. There's that sort of aspect to it. However, as a music major, it's not like other majors where, your talent is shown in computer science or like you're sitting there. You as a person are what you're going for. People are looking at you all the time for the talent that you have been given and that you have, been filling all these boxes in to learn. Yeah. So it was, Les Mis was my favorite thing I've ever done, ever. And it opened the door for EPAC then. And I'm so thankful for that because they're one of my favorite people, like the group in general. They're so amazing and they're so accepting. As a woman and as just a young artist in general, there was never this sense of like, oh, she's just out of college. Oh, she's like, it was like, no, you have the experience. You really do. So just use it and be confident in that. I'm like, whoa, you're right. Yeah. That's awesome. So yeah, it's opened so many doors. They're talked about doing some audition workshops with me. We're trying to get their program back up, their youth program in general, which is something I want to do. I would like to have a youth theater eventually.
Like own one?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. So just having, that start to that is just an incredible opportunity. And then yesterday we just had callbacks for a music directing their next youth production, which is Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer Jr. in December. Big difference between Les Mis and that. Yep. Very big difference. I was like sitting there playing it. I was like, oh, I can play this perfectly. Maybe I shouldn't have beat myself up that I couldn't play Les Mis because it's Les Mis,
Right, yeah, right.
But I'm super excited. And it's just one of those things where I never expected to be doing this full time and, being on stage and then going to music direct something and then going back to Starbucks. Right. There's so many things that you don't expect to be what it is, but it's incredible. And that's, I think, the biggest part of theater is just being so willing to just do the work and go for it.
And be happy with what you get.
Yes.
That's some of the biggest mistakes I've been seeing is that people are too focused on one particular aspect when they have the qualifications to do so much more.
Yep.
Just because you don't get this acting role doesn't mean you can't be involved in the production at all. You can be a stage manager. You can be a prop person. You can be a dancer. You can be an ensemble. And ensemble's not always the worst thing.
No, ensemble's the best. I'm, doing SpongeBob right now. Ensemble's my favorite thing because we just get to be crazy the whole time. And there's certain shows that the ensemble is in everything,
Right.
And that is sometimes even better than being the lead because you get to be in everything. There's some leads that are on stage for 2 minutes and that's it. And then they bow after, the ensemble that was in every second.
Right.
However, if your mindset is, well, I did more than that, so why, that's going to make you feel so bitter and you're not doing it for the right reason.
Right. You have to have an open mind when it comes to theater because it is such a competitive space.
Yes.
And if you have that narrow-minded, focused in attitude, you're not going to be happy.
No.
You're not going to enjoy theater, and you're going to be bitter towards it. If you approach it with more of an open aspect, that if I don't get this, maybe I'll get that. If I don't get that, well, that's okay. I can just maybe there's because. If we're being realistic, every theater can probably use an extra stagehand.
Oh, for sure.
Right. Or even conducting. Who would have thought? Conducting is a giant part, and there's not a lot of conductors. So why? And especially if you come to LBC, you're gonna have to take conducting, and you might as well do it because now you know how to conduct, and you can always step up. It's always about building yourself up for future success, and that's something a lot of young people don't realize is that it's not like one day you can just learn like 2 + 2 = 4. It's years and years of practice. I don't conduct the same way today that I did back in high school when I was drum major. I was awful back then, and I've come leaps and bounds away from that. It's because I had to practice, because I had to put in the time and effort. You don't sing the same way you sang when you were a kid.
No.
For multiple reasons.
Yeah.
But it's you have to invest in yourself, and that's what people don't like to do. They just want, I'll just do it and I'll be fine and I'll learn it. I won't practice for the orchestra. I'll just show up there and sight read. I can do that. But excelling is the goal, not being able just to do it. It's to excel at it.
And knowing yourself enough to know, okay, this is something I'm more natural at, and this is something I'm not more natural at, and I have to work on that just as much as the thing I want to work on. I have singing always came sort of naturally. Obviously, I've came leaps and bounds. However, I could not sight sing for the life of me. I still struggle. Like musicianship lab. Dr. Gerlach was my hero the whole time because I should have failed so many times.
Well, me too.
The fact that he never gave up on me, and there were so many times where I'd be like, I literally can't do this. Why am I a music major right now that I can't sit here and sight sing this? And there were some people that could look at a piece and just sight sing it right away. And I'm like, oh, I wish, But then people hear me sing and they're like, oh, you must be a good sight singer. I'm like, no, I'm not. That's something I have to work on so much. And knowing exactly what you have to work on in order to grow so much is exactly what we need to do.
One thing that really surprised me when I was talking to Dr. Bigley was that he's a horrible memorizer.
Yes.
And that completely blew my mind, knowing Dr. Bigley and how particular he is.
Mm-hmm.
I would thought he would just, just like that. So it's really good to know yourself and know your weaknesses and ask people about. You can't be afraid to receive criticism. And you can't be bitter towards it either, because if you don't take criticism, you're never going to get better at what you do.
Yep.
Well, it is nearing an hour, so we're going to have to end off our time a little bit on the radio. You have given us a clip of your senior recital.
I have.
You want to introduce this piece?
Sure. This is a song called I'll Be Here from Ordinary Days. It's actually a show about, ordinary days that aren't so ordinary sometimes. But then you have to just keep going in life. That's like the littlest example ever. But this song specifically is talking about a woman who lost her husband in 9/11.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yep.
That's fun.
Yep. And it's just kind of talking about their story and then being able to move on.
What was it like to practice that?
Oh, it was a lot. At the time I was doing my senior recital, I was going through a lot personally, and I was in a very broken state of mind, body, soul, spirit, everything. And I would sob throughout this entire song. I don't know how this is literally from my senior recital. There is one point where I literally start crying. And in my dress rehearsal, we literally stopped at one point because I was just sobbing on stage. So, however, learning to sing through that, learning to sing through emotions through worst times in life was the best thing to learn during my senior recital. So
yeah, and singing while crying, that's hard.
Yep.
And maybe not the best, or
you just have to learn how to do it healthfully.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I've heard so many things on the movie of Les Mis and how not very well it was done, like the crying and the singing.
Yes. Yeah.
So this is what was it called again?
I'll Be Here.
I'll Be Here, from Britt Jarkowsky's senior recital.
We met, of all places, in front of Christie's, some freakishly cold winter's day. He had made several unlack-foddering layers of wool. He slipped on the ice with his grocery bags full. So I rested some Fruit Loops he dropped by the curb, and he made some remark that my smile was superb. I thought that was sweet, and I started to go, and he said, hey, what you doing tomorrow? Because I'll be here at the corner of Bleecker and Mercer tomorrow at 7. If you want to meet up, I'll be waiting right here. And in case there are two fellas waiting for you, my name's John. He waved and then he was gone. went back there to meet him, mostly to see if he'd show. And there he was, out in the cold with his jacket pulled tight. He took me to dinner and kissed me goodnight. The next week we went to this terrible play. Then the week after that, drank hot chocolate all day. Then suddenly, 8 or 9 months had gone by when he said, hey, what you doing the rest of your life? Because I'll be here, right beside you as long as you want me to be. There's no question, there is nothing I've wanted so long in my life. This might sound immature, but I'm totally sure you're the one. And we had just begun. We got hitched in September, our favorite month, with this rock band that played in this old synagogue. And we bought an apartment on West 17th Street and talked about children and getting a dog. Our first anniversary came in a flash. He promised to take the day off. He had to stop into the office that morning, and so I went walking uptown to this bakery I know. When I heard on the street what I thought was a joke, till I noticed the sirens and saw all the smoke. So I'm running back home with this feeling of dread, to the voicemail he left, with the last words he said. I'm sorry. I don't mean to ruin your evening by bringing up all of this stuff. You're probably wondering why I even called you tonight. But today something happened that spooked me alright. I saw this storm cloud of papers fall down from the sky. Then I thought of that day, and I started to cry. And as sure as I breathed, I heard John Clue S. Dave saying, hey, you're allowed to move on. It's okay. Because I'll be here, even if you decide to get rid of my favorite sweater. Even if you go out on my birthday this year, instead of sitting at home, letting all of life's moments pass by. You don't have to cry, because I'll be here when you start going back to the places we went to together. When you take off my ring and you let yourself smile. When you meet someone handsome and patient and true. When he says that he wants to be married to you. When you call him one night and he meets you downtown and you finally answer him yes. Yes, Jason. I will marry you. I will give you my heart. It has taken so long, but I'm ready to start. Right now, John's whispering congrats in my ear, 'cause I finally let myself tell you that I will be here.
What a song,
Yeah.
man. Oh my god, I'm like
I know.
listening to him, like getting chills. I'm like
I
starting
know.
to tear up a little bit.
I know. Not to end on a sad note, but
Well,
should have picked a happier one. Sorry.
no, that's fine. I mean, it just shows, because there are some people that can perform songs and I don't feel anything,
Mm.
right? So it's that extra spice of being able to make somebody cry through your voice. Because granted, yeah, the words are sad, but if you don't sing them or convey that sadness, it's not going to do anything for you.
Yeah.
So it was surprise. Did you ever go to Braden Cricky's recital?
Yeah.
The Footprint song at the
Yes.
very end.
Yep.
Oh my gosh, did he sell that
I know.
so hard. I started tearing up. And I'm not a crier either.
Yep.
So I was like, oh my gosh, dude.
Yep. Our job in theater is to be a storyteller, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So we can practice all we want to sing these notes perfectly, constantly. We can practice all we want to be, you know, look perfect or seem perfect, but if we're not conveying the story that or the character that we're trying to get across, then what's the point? You know, it's not about us and on the stage. It's about the person we're playing and about the audience and how it's going to impact them.
Yeah. So you've kind of had this, not necessarily a similar journey of losing a loved one, but you've had similar hardships, such as having your, I don't know exactly what happened.
Yeah.
With your hip.
Yes. So I was diagnosed with congenital hip dysplasia when I was 13, and
we'll get into that more.
Yep.
On Facebook.com. So if you want to continue listening, if you're on the radio, you can find us at thestory.com. Oh, nope, sorry. Facebook.com/thestory, Corey Rosen, CoryRosen. Where can they find you? For any of like your work or any of that kind of stuff?
On Instagram. I usually just post everything on Instagram, and my username is Britt.Jarkowsky.
Cool. Do you have a website or anything?
I do not. No, not yet.
Not yet. All right, well, with that said, I hope you guys on the radio enjoy the rest of your day, and let's get back to the music. All right, so congenital hip displacement, was that?
Dysplasia, yeah.
Dysplasia.
Mm-hmm. So basically, I didn't know until I went on a skiing trip. I fell down stairs. It wasn't even because of skiing. I fell down these stairs, and my hips popped out of place. And I threw it back in place, and my friends were like, what? And I was like, what do you mean? They were like, that's not how it's supposed to be. And I was like, I've done that my whole life. And they were like, what? My parents were like, what? What are you talking about? My parents had no idea. And I was like, no, when I walk, my hips just pop out of place and I just throw them back in place. And when I run and whenever, and they were like, that's not normal. And I didn't know that.
Really?
Nope.
Like, don't you do it too?
Yes, exactly. Like, don't they just pop out constantly? So they took me to a specialist, and they found out I had very, very severe hip dysplasia. Normally, hip dysplasia, so this is your bone here, and your hip covers like this,
yes.
And you kind of go like this.
Yep.
Normal people have like this much coverage, and they can roll, and it doesn't pop out. I had this much coverage.
So not at all.
None. Yeah. So it literally just would cover just the tiniest bit, and it would just pop out whenever it wanted to.
My.
And I didn't, we didn't know until very later. Apparently, they're supposed to catch it when you're a baby, and they can fix it very easily by putting you in a cast, in like these cast type things. And it fixes it so that your body molds to not be able to do that. However, they didn't catch it. And it's passed down through
Is that
like
hereditary?
yes.
Okay.
And my dad, so my grandpa, I've never met my dad's dad. He passed away a long time ago. And apparently he always complained about his hips. Always. And he passed away early. And so we never knew, we never got the chance to be like, hey, Pop, like what happened there? Because I think I have it.
Right.
Yeah. So then I started PT. I went to a surgeon. They right away. It was like literally the next day. They were like, we want you to go see someone now. And I was like, okay. So we started PT that week, and I was doing PT for many, many years. It just became part of my childhood, and I would just be in PT a lot. I would see a specialist once a month. Once a month, I would get x-rays. So I've gotten a million x-rays over the years. And it wasn't until, obviously I was performing. I was not a dancer growing up, so I was in theater, but our academy didn't have any sort of dance program, so I didn't grow up dancing. And it's where I am still in theater. It scares me more than anything. Growing, but scares me. And
is it because of the hip?
No, just because it's terrifying, and I'm not.
Okay.
It's not my strongest suit. So
right.
No, it doesn't. Hip wise, I'm fine now, which is good.
Cool.
But anyway, so when I turned 18, I went to college when I was 19, and even so, I started dancing. We have dance classes at LBC, and I started dancing more full time ish. and walking to and from classes and things like that, it got unbearable.
Mm.
And I would just literally be walking to class and I would just have to stop so many times because my hips would just be so bad. So I got sick of putting a Band-Aid on it per se, and I'd gotten, cortisone shots and all kinds of needles in my hips and things like that just weren't going to be a permanent fix.
Right.
So
kicking the can down the road.
Yep, without telling my parents, which I should have, but I was an adult and I've always been we grew up very independently, so I, from 16 on, I went to doctor's appointments by myself, and I scheduled my first hip surgery. I basically told my doctor, Dr. Henry Boateng, I call him my best friend. I love him with all my heart, and he was like, do you want to do it? I was like, yep, I want to do it. So we scheduled my first surgery, and we did not know how intense it would be. We were not told how intense it would be, and we were not told how long recovery would be. I was scheduled to begin Titanic with Servant Stage we would start at the end of August. I got my hip surgery the first week of July, and I was in the hospital for a week and a half. I lost a lot of blood. I wasn't keeping any food down. We figured out I was allergic to every narcotic ever.
What?
No idea why, but I'm allergic to every narcotic, and it just, my body rejects everything. So from a person who's gotten 4 hip surgeries with just taking extra strength Tylenol,
right,
it's, I have a really high pain tolerance now, so it's great. It's great. I learned a lot. Yep. So we started the first surgery, and I was in a wheelchair for about a month. I was in a walker then for the next month, and then I was on crutches for about 3 months. After that, I should have been on for a lot longer. However, I was determined to be in Titanic, and I literally learned to walk for Titanic. Now, walk is an interesting phrase because it was more of a limp. It wasn't a full walk. Obviously, I had no strength whatsoever in my hips at that point, so it was a bit of a limp. However, I did it, and it was awesome. And I did PT that whole year until the next surgery, and then we got the screws out of the same hip. There were like these screws this big, 4 or 5 of them in the one side.
So what exactly did they have to do? Did they have to make a bone piece of metal to help?
So they basically, the doctor, he was kidding around, but he actually wasn't. They take turns and break my pelvis in half.
That's right.
And your pelvis is pretty strong, they have to take turns because it gets tiring. They break your pelvis in half. It is an 8-hour plus surgery, which is a long time to be under anesthesia. And
thank God you were under anesthesia.
Oh well, yeah. Yes. As a singer, I had to be careful with surgeries because so many tubes were going down my throat.
Right.
We figured out that we had to use a child-sized tube that it wouldn't be laying on my vocal cords. I would wake up, with no voice for weeks. However, it wasn't as bad when they used the child tube because it wasn't just resting on my vocal cords the whole time.
That was one of the procedures that ruined Julie Andrews' voice.
Yes. Yeah. Yep. Exactly. So it was something I was really scared of, and it was something I, never really had a problem with. I'm so thankful. COVID ruined my voice for a while, but surgeries didn't. So weird. Yep. So then I got it was during missions conference. The one time I got a surgery, and I was on crutches then for a few weeks. And then as soon as I guess it'd be my junior year ended, a week later, I went and got the 3rd surgery, and I was basically out of commission all summer long. It was the longest recovery out of all of them. So from May to when we went back to school, basically, I had just gotten off crutches. I was still in pain, a lot of pain, but I was done with crutches at that point. So it was a long time to be on crutches, and it was a long time to be in pain and on my couch, as all of my friends were doing theater internships and dancing and doing shows and being able to audition for things. I was stuck, and I was really angry about it. and it took me a long time to not be super angry at God for it,
Right.
and super angry in general about it. I learned obviously so much about myself and my spiritual life and all that through that, and I am stronger than ever because of that. Um, However, it was just the biggest thing that's ever happened to me, and it took every ounce of strength I had and God and every supporter I had to get me through it. I was very angry at God for a long time about it. It was, I think, when we came back to school after my third surgery, my friend Brianna was like, Britt, when was the last time you prayed? And I was like, months, because I'm angry and I can't, like, I physically can't sit down and pray because I'm that angry right now at God. And she was like, okay, we're just gonna sit here until you do. She was like, because you need to now. And I was like, we sat in the upstairs bathroom of the mezzanine, in the chapel, and we sat there for hours, and she prayed, and we sat there, and finally I did pray. And then once I prayed, it was like, waterworks and all feelings that I had, kept up for so long about it and being angry about it. But now I look back and it's the best decision I ever made. And I know it was all God that got me through it, because I would not have been able to do it. Yeah. And I'm pain free most of the time. Obviously I get sore, and obviously there's times where I'm like, whoa. Literally during SpongeBob, we had to do this one dance move. And it was the first time I felt there was like a tendon or something in my hip that like activated, and I like could move. I was like, whoa. And someone was like, what? I was like, I just activated this tendon. And they were like, what do you mean? I was like, oh, sorry. No, I couldn't for years. And there's still years later that I am finding little things that I'm like, oh, I have not been able to do that right. Or like at the end of the day, I do limp a little bit because I'm tired. Like my hips get tired.
Muscles sore.
Yeah, exactly. So it's gonna be a long time process, I think, but I have no restrictions. And I danced in my senior recital, and there were so many things that I was determined to do, and I had the support and the love to be able to achieve that, which is great. So, and I don't have to, get X-rays every day now or every month.
Right. Yeah, that's probably nice.
Yeah, it's very nice. I haven't been to. It was honestly really bittersweet. I had been seeing this surgeon once a month since I was 13. And then we had my last appointment like a year ago, and he was like, this is it. Like, you're done. You're done now. And I was like, what? And so we got pictures and, like, talked, and he.
Did you have the screws?
Yeah, I have. I have like 8 screws that he gave me for my surgeries, and yeah, he's the best. He was gonna come to my senior recital and then have the surgery scheduled, but he's been. Yeah, all my nurses were like, we're gonna watch on Facebook, and there's just so many. It was really cool to have like a certain community that they just knew me as the theater girl that was getting all these hip surgeries.
Right.
Was always in the hospital. So yeah.
So, how does one deal with a disability? Would you call that a disability?
It was, yeah. At that point, it was.
How do you deal with that and still do theater, or was you were dead determined to get to do theater? Yeah. How did your doctors were ever like, listen, Britt, you need to slow down?
Oh, for sure, yeah. There was one time, so Titanic was supposed to start. Now I was a maid in Titanic. Like I could have been like, no, I can't do it. I could have been like, this is not that important, so I'm not gonna do it. But at that point, I had been on the couch for months, and I was like, I want to do this. I'm tired of sitting around. I want to do this. And I went to my doctor's appointment hoping to be able to start PT. It was a month and a half after my surgery. I still wasn't allowed to start PT. So let me rephrase this a little bit. A hip reconstruction surgery and a hip replacement are 2 different things.
Gotcha.
Replacements, you can walk the next hour. Like they put you on your weight on it right away. Hip reconstruction, months. You can't put any sort of weight on it. So I felt like an old lady trapped like in this 21-year-old body. My mom had to do everything for me, which I'm so thankful, because she did. She literally, from feeding me to bathing me. Like there were just so many things that I never thought, as a 21-year-old I would have to endure. Yeah. But I was so determined to do theater, and my surgeon was so supportive of it, which was really great. And but there was one specific appointment that I did not keep it together, and I got so mad. I just sat there and just started sobbing when he was like, "Nope, it's not time yet. We did X-rays, and you can't walk yet." And it was just one of those things where it was like I was finally feeling okay, and I felt like it was like, okay, I can move a little bit, and then he was like, "Nope, you're gonna
wait."
Yep, 8 more weeks," and I was like, "No."
That's probably
Nope.
one of the biggest lessons in patience you've probably ever had.
Yes. Yep. I honestly, someone asked me, they're like, as a teacher, like, how do you have so much patience? I was like, it's not from teaching. It's literally from hip surgeries. That's the only reason that I have so much patience, is literally from hip surgeries. And now I feel like I can do anything. Like I can wait forever. Yeah. So, but I was really glad my surgeon team was just super supportive of like, no, we want you to get back dancing. We want you to dance.
Right.
Please dance. But
that's awesome.
Right. Be careful.
Be careful. Yeah. Dance, but safely.
Yep.
So how did you ever fall into depression, or how did you stay out of it, or how, because that's a lot to deal with spiritually.
Yes. I was severely depressed. I never went to see anyone for it. I should have. I did therapy after graduating college, and I was able to finally unload a lot of things and be able to navigate how to stay out of a depressed state. As an introvert person, I'm an Enneagram 6, and I'm an introvert, and I'm a loyalist. Yep. And so Enneagram 6 for some reason fall into depression really easly. Even in like happiness states, like think about like sadness from the movie Inside Out.
Right.
That's basically me. And so like I see beauty in sadness. However, in that moment I was severely depressed for long time, and I had my really supportive family. I had a really supportive friend group that kept me going. However, learning to not depend on them and was something that I had to learn months later, because it would get to be a lot for someone,
Right.
Even being in a relationship, it put so much pressure on, like, okay, he had to take care of me
right
constantly, and it put so much pressure on so many aspects of life in that way. So it really encouraged me to get to know myself better, and we talked about that with like theater classes, but knowing how to deal with depression and deal with anxiety and things like that just creep up really,
without any warning.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep. So
that's been a large part of my journey, is learning how to be okay with things. From having my mother pass away, to losing a house, to having to do all these extraneous things because my family wasn't in the best situation.
Yeah.
And my faith was really challenged at that point too, because I was like, God, how dare you let us lose our house? How dare you let my mother die? How dare you have my dad? My dad was an abusive drunk.
Okay.
So I was mad about all the things.
Yep.
And it was such a complicated life especially as a kid, as an 8-year-old who was the biggest mother's boy in the entire world. To have to come to a realization that it really isn't about me, because that's what it was all about. It was like, how I'm doing that, I can't do this, I'm doing this, this affects me in this way. It wasn't. I was a very egocentric person, and I had to learn that it's not about me; it's all about God. Because I was angry at God. I was like, why did you do this to me? But one of my biggest breaking points was my mother had donated her organs to science.
Okay.
And because she was a science teacher, she loved science and everything about science. And actually, that's part of the reason why I'm a huge germaphobe.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't know if you realized over the colleges I would always use hand sanitizer.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I'm
Okay.
everything related to science kind of was just bad juju to me,
Mm,
and then COVID just
I bet.
heightened everything.
Oh my gosh.
But the doctors came back and said that they couldn't use any of her organs because they were so damaged from
Yeah.
alcohol, drinking, smoking, and all that jazz. So
Yeah.
had she had lived on, she would have been in immense pain,
Mm-hmm.
been this and I don't mean to say like burden, but that's what it would have been for
Yes,
us. It
for
would have been a
sure.
gigantic burden for our family, for my dad who also has cerebral palsy.
Mm.
So he can almost not walk very well and is also legally blind. So it would have just been this immense burden. And without my mother's death, my dad wouldn't be 6 years sober, probably.
Mm.
It, without her death, I wouldn't have found my because I wanted to be a zookeeper when I was a kid.
Are you
I'm
serious?
dead serious, yeah.
That's awesome.
I wanted to be this ultra big scientist, and but because she died and she was a science teacher, my brain dealt with it in the way of, oh well, science is bad, it kills people.
Mm-hmm.
um, which is to some extent is true, but not in this case. It just forced me towards the music side. It was either science, or music, and it
Mm.
just shoved me over into the music side, which I'm eternally grateful for.
Of course. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, that was the biggest moment of, okay, God, maybe He knows what He's doing by taking my mother out, and one of the most peaceful ways. She died of a heart attack in her sleep,
Oh.
so it was just instant
Yeah.
gone,
Yeah.
and which was hard, but one of the most merciful ways she could have gone out.
Yep.
So I don't know if you ever had that experience of like, well, this is what it's come to a head to. This is why this has happened.
Yes. Literally. Yes. There are so many times in my life that I'm like, in the moment, I am so confused why things are happening. I feel like that's for everybody. Hardship happens, someone passes away, all kinds of things
Mhm.
happen that you're like, why would God allow this? And then you look later and you're astounded to know how much work He did in you and made you grow through the worst of times.
Mhm.
The worst of times. Um, yeah, I was looking back at my senior recital when I was sending you the clip, and I was thinking back to feeling terrible, and I was at a terrible place in life. However, it was the first time ever, even amidst a awful time in my life, I felt like I was truly worshiping through musical theater. It was literally the first time, and
Really?
there were so many bad things that happened that semester that I was so incredibly thankful for. It was literally like an hour of just complete worship through musical theater, and I didn't think that was possible. It was we
Mhm.
would hear that all throughout college, like, no, you can worship through musical theater. And I was like, I've never experienced that, right?
Right.
Until the moment that I was so broken, and I allowed myself to not lift myself up, but allow God to lift me up through
Right.
performing. That I was immediately in a worshipful zone through musical theater then.
So we talk about this a lot at LBC, but
Yeah.
what do you consider worship?
Hmm. Um,
How did you define that?
that's a really good question.
That's a giant topic within the MWPA because it's such an umbrella term, right?
Yeah.
And there's literally like a worship arts major where
Mm-hmm.
their whole dedicated purpose is to lead people in worship. So there's some people who have a very narrow-minded view of worship and then a very broad view of worship. So what would you consider yourself to define as worship?
Um, I have always, whenever I am truly feeling like I am worshiping, I'm like, okay, here I am. It's literally just being in the presence of, feeling like I'm in the presence of God in a
Mm.
sense. Um, Letting yourself truly go in that moment, all your cares, all your worries, your schedule, your everything that you're dealing with, and letting God truly work inside of you in that moment. And I feel like we can sit in church and we can sing this worship song and we put our hands up and things like that.
Right.
But I always feel like the most worshipful times are the when you least expect them to. Like things like your senior recital. I'm literally singing this Broadway musical and I feel more connected to God than I've ever felt. Or just standing outside and looking at creation and being like, this is worship. This is me literally worshiping God right now because I am just in the presence of his creation. I'm in the presence of him and me, and that's all that matters.
Right.
Finding the beauty of worship in all the little things, like theater. In a secular theater, I could have this worshipful moment that I could never have expected, but I only had it because I let go of myself and my selfish ways or thinking about myself, and I let God work through me. And that's the most worshipful moment I think you could have.
Yeah, it's always weird when because worship will sneak up on you.
Yeah.
And God will definitely sneak up on you. I went to Noah Reber's recital.
Yes.
I guess it's project technically. He did a worship project, so it did a whole hour of worship, being a worship arts leader, and one of the songs that I've never in my life ever heard before. I'm not a person who stands up, raises their hands, and all that stuff. It feels awkward to me.
Yep, it's not how I grew up.
Not how I grew. Well, it's kind of how I grew up, but it's just never felt right to me.
Yeah.
And people are like, "Well, why aren't you so expressive?" I'm like, I just don't feel as expressive as that. There's some people who jump around and dance around and run around the sanctuary. It's not me. I'm content swaying side to side to the beat. That's me.
Yep.
That's literally it. But during Noah Reber's worship set, just something, it had to be his voice. He has an amazing voice.
Yes.
And I forget the song, but it made me stand up, put my arms up, and then 1 second later, I broke down and started crying and just sat back down.
Yep.
So,
yep.
And I don't know what came over me. I literally have no idea, but it was just this release of emotion, and I just let myself go, and he touched me, and it just, everything was gone, and I was free for a second, but I felt this hard conviction at the same time.
Yeah.
Which is such a weird dynamic to have.
Yep.
So it was, God really works in mysterious ways.
Yep.
And you never expect it.
Never.
So you say working at a secular place. There was a conversation at LBC about having boundaries as a Christian, because there are some things that are unchristian in theater, and there are some things we're told to stay away from. How do you deal with that boundary? What is the boundary? How do you define that for yourself?
Yeah. It's always this hard line between knowing that you are not yourself on stage in that moment, right? You are a character. However, you are still yourself. There is no escaping that. Your name is in the playbill. Your name is on that stage. You as a person, as God's creation, as a believer in Christ, you are on that stage representing God, representing your family, representing all kinds of things like that, representing your school. And we talked about it a lot in acting classes, and it was something that was honestly the most impactful thing I think I learned here. Through Johnny Russell, actually, our acting teacher. He's one of the most incredible people in the whole world. And he was saying that, you are always yourself on stage, no matter what. You are still representing yourself. So you need to know your boundaries. And we had our dream books that we talked about before. And we literally would write down, okay, I'm not going to be nude on stage. I'm not going to be, if I'm married, some people were like, I'm not going to kiss another person on stage. I'm not going to have, do sexual things on stage. I'm not going to curse on stage. I'm not going to take the Lord's name in vain. Making a list of, these are the things I'm willing to cross, and these are the things I'm not, and I cannot. Make it so much easier now, because as after college, you audition for everything. And,
Right.
you know, your job becomes auditioning after college. That's literally your job. Your job is to audition for everything. And most of the time it's a no. Like, literally, you audition for everything, and most of the time it's a no, and very few times it's a yes, which is, you know, great when it's a yes.
Which is why you have to audition all the time. Because
Exactly,
it's always
constantly.
no.
Auditioning is an art in itself.
Yes.
And knowing exactly your boundaries as a Christian and as a person, it helps you to know, okay, here's an audition for this. I'm not going to audition for this because it has this in it. I know this character has to say this or this and this. If there's certain shows, however, that they would be like, what about this show? Like, you would be perfect in this show. And I'm like, I know. Like, I would love to do that show. For example, Next to Normal is one of my favorite shows ever. It focuses on a family that's dealing with severe mental health throughout the whole thing. Each person kind of represents a different form of mental health.
Yep.
And Natalie is one of my dream roles ever. She curses throughout the whole thing. She, I think I don't know if she kisses or not. There's certain things that I'm okay with, and there's certain things I'm not okay with. That show I would for sure do it, just because it represents something completely different than going on stage and doing this thing that, you know, I'm trying to think of an example. A show like Kinky Boots.
Yeah.
You know, a show like Kinky Boots that, in my opinion, does not have a redemptive ending to it. It's just be you, be proud, and that's what it is. And some people completely feel different about that. That's just my own personal, you know, opinion on it.
Right.
A show like Next to Normal, I feel like the things that are in it are essential to get through the audience that all could also struggle with that, or also struggle with the same mental health disorder that I'm showing. So in that moment, me cursing is not me as a person, you know, just cursing, even if
without a purpose.
Without a purpose, exactly. Not like I'm against cursing in general, but like just an example. So I have made a list of shows that I've been like, yeah, I will do that, even if it crosses just a little bit. I'm okay with that. If my family doesn't come to see it, cool. You know, there's going to be certain shows in your life that people are going to be like, well, I'm not probably going to support you in that. And that's okay. You know, you as a person need to have your own personal boundaries, your own personal line of, I'm okay with this. Even though you might think it's a little past what it needs to be, I'm okay with it because I think it has a bigger meaning. And I can be a light to this cast through this. There's so many shows that, you know, people are like, you would do that show? I'm like, yes, because I could also reach just by being, you know, just by having Christ in me, not being like, hey, here's the gospel, you know, just by having Christ in me, showing that I am full of love because of him. That's that's the biggest mission of being an actor or an actress in theater as a Christ follower. Like, that is the reason. And people see a difference. They do. There are so many people that are like, wow, like, you're just really nice. Or like, I didn't think you were a Christian because you accept me. I'm like, why wouldn't I? I love you. Like, you're a human, and you
bear the image of God.
Yes, so here I am, and I'm gonna love you no matter what. And I think that's the most important, to have your own personal boundaries, but not being afraid to go past that just because you're scared or uncomfortable, because the most beautiful moments happen when you're just a little bit uncomfortable. And
God uses all things.
Yes.
To glorify him. It can use a lot of things to glorify him, and especially portraying a broken person in a redemptive setting is one of those ways, because redemption, God is all about redemption. And whether it be strictly religious or not doesn't matter. As long as there's redemption and there's righteous redemption, that is going to point towards God.
Yep.
Because all good things are from God. So there are questions when it comes to stuff like Kinky Boots or other shows of that caliber where it's questionable.
Yeah.
But as long as you know and you're right with God,
Exactly.
that's all that matters.
Yep.
If you can justify it through biblically
Through-
accurate
yes.
Reasoning,
Yes. Not through yourself.
not through yourself,
Yes.
but if you can support it with a Bible passage, then that's
or
all
you
that
don't
matters.
feel conviction.
Or you don't feel
about,
conviction
yep,
about
if you
it.
have prayerfully considered it and you feel like I need to be in this show, I need to be a light in this show, even if people are going to be like, why would you be in that show?
Mhm.
You know, I feel like as Christians in theater, we do judge. We have a tendency to judge each other way more for certain projects. If we're not at Sight and Sound,
You're a
then
Christian.
you're not a Christian. Yeah, you
Right,
know,
yeah.
you're not doing the good
Lord's
Lord's
work.
work there, you know? So there is this just kind of stigmatism with it that it's sad because we can reach just as many people just by being love.
And you can reach a lot of unbelievers.
Yes.
Because let's be real, most of the people going to Sight and Sound already believe in the gospel. That's why they're
Correct.
there.
Correct.
If you're gonna go to a different like Kavad or Prima, it's probably a lot less Christian, especially at EPAC.
Yes.
It's a lot less Christian, a lot less of a Christian environment. And not only are you being a light to the audience, but in the backstage where you're talking to actors and everything, they're gonna see it and they're gonna think there's something different about that person. I wonder
Yes.
what it is.
Yep.
And then, like you said, they'll be like, you're a Christian, yet you don't hate me.
Yep.
Because there's all these stigmas against Christians, against bad faith Christians who don't really understand the Bible at all.
Yep.
And and that's part of the journey, is that you have to be a proper representative of Christ, and that is one of the reasons why it's so unfortunate here at LBC that it's so. As a musical theater person, it's almost a choice.
Yes.
You either go for the Bible or you go for the musical theater. So I'm interested in having a conversation about that. We've already had that conversation, but I mean, like, with other people.
Yeah.
So we've talked about boundaries. Oh, you mentioned kissing people.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm curious, what are some of the theater tricks that that are fun? Because I've done the hidden kiss
Yeah.
thing, but are there any other like cool theater tricks like to convey perspective or convey a certain emotion or action that is a lot of fun to do?
Not really.
Not really.
I will say most times in theater, you just kind of go, it's not fake anymore.
It's not. Oh, really?
No, you just kind of are
Just go for
going,
it.
you just go for it. Yeah. As long as both actors are okay with it. Most shows, if something is required of you, it's a conversation before you're cast. Like, hey, hopefully,
Hopefully.
yeah, hey, your character needs to do this. Are you okay with this?
Mm.
And it's a yes or no in that moment. You know, you have a time to think about it, or you have that, actually, no, I'm not. I feel like there's moments in theater that you just have to be like if a costume is super inappropriate, just having to be like, okay, am I representing Christ well in this outfit? Or am I in this dance? Am I representing Christ well? And if you feel so convicted that you're not, most cases, if you go to a director and say, I'm a little bit uncomfortable with this, can we change this a little bit? In most cases, especially in the world of theater that is more respectful than ever of just individuals,
Mm-hmm.
and whatever they believe, it's not going to be a problem, right? It's going to be a conversation, but it's not going to be a problem. And if you're not afraid to just be honest with that, then it's not like you're not going to go far.
Right. Yeah. If you're not honest with saying, "Hey, I'm uncomfortable," it's first off, it's gonna hurt the performance.
Yeah.
Second off, it's gonna hurt the relationship between you and the cast members, because
Mhm.
when something's wrong, people are gonna know.
Oh, for sure. And
There's-
the audience knows.
The audience knows. Yeah, because it's not gonna seem. It's gonna seem it's gonna you're not gonna have the suspension of belief
Mm-hmm.
at that point,
Yeah.
where which means that you are fully committed that this is happening in this universe
Yeah.
that's being portrayed. And it's there have been countless shows where I have gone to, and it's like something's off here.
Mm-hmm.
They don't connect at all.
Yep.
There's something going on here,
Mm-hmm.
and it distracts me from the performance, and it's bad memory, remembered for bad reasons. So if you're not honest with being uncomfortable, you're going to become bitter towards theater,
Mm-hmm.
and you got to realize that people are going to be okay with your uncomfortableness, and people will most likely adapt. And if they don't, then screw them. You
Yep.
know what I mean?
Exactly.
So,
Yep.
moving on from theater, I want to talk about, or kind of related to theater,
Yeah.
is the teaching aspect. You
Yes.
had mentioned before the show that there was kind of a stigma almost against teaching, as while also being a theater major.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I remember specifically during my freshman year, someone made a joke of like, well, yeah, as soon as you get out of college, if you start teaching, you failed. And I remember being like, why? It didn't make sense in my head. And I understand the fact, we go for theater, and if we're not on stage, it's this moment of being like, well, what are you doing?
Mhm.
What was the point of going for theater? You should have just went for teaching. However, I think there is a beauty in the fact that, I went to school for musical theater, and I didn't want my focus to be in music education. I wanted my focus to be on theater. So if I wanted to teach theater, I could, With a BFA, you can teach in most private institutes. If I wanted to, like, you don't need a teaching degree,
Right.
for most private institutes. Obviously colleges and stuff are different, and you need another degree for that. And teaching, I don't know what the word is.
For teaching like high school or
Yeah, like,
elementary,
yes.
For a private institution, you do not need a teaching certificate. It's only the public.
Yes.
It's the only public schools that you need that.
Mm-hmm, exactly. So I started teaching my junior year of college. My voice teacher was like, hey, I feel like, and obviously I had taught acting classes and stuff before that, but she was like, I feel like you love voice. You love the science of voice. You love how things work. You're a nerd for like vocal health. I feel like you'd be good at that, and just try it. And she was like, here's a student. I was like,
That's a good day.
okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Here's a student. And so I started with 2 students at her studio, and I did not manage. It took me a long time to manage the schedule with school. And there was like part of the financial side that I had never, done before. So it took a long time for me to get into the groove of it. However, I started teaching at Menchie Music then, and I had pretty much a full studio after a couple months, and it was so fun. And it was just kind of one of those things where you're like, yeah, I love this so much. I can literally just be a nerd about everything I love, and people improve, and it's crazy. I had so many students that I like look back, and they came in and they were like, I'm tone deaf, and I'm like, first of all, you're not. That I
Right.
don't think that's a thing. However, let's see what happens. And I have one girl who literally could not sing anything on pitch ever, and now she literally just played a lead in her school musical. Like, it is
Wow.
so cool, and it is not like, it's not me. I help, obviously, but if there's a connection with your teacher, and if there's a commitment within the student, there's nothing they can't do, right? It's just one of the most rewarding things as a teacher to be like, hello, did you see that?
Right.
Do you hear the difference? And sometimes they don't. It takes so long. Even myself, it takes so long. I remember my teacher senior year, Christian Brewer, she was like, do you hear the difference in your voice? I was like, no, I don't. Like, I still sound terrible. She's like, you don't. You sound good. And it takes so long for all these students to like realize that they're actually improving. And then the moment that they realize it, it's like this moment of like, did you hear that? That was me. I was like, I know. You've sounded like that for a couple weeks now, but I just have to wait till the moment that you realize it. Yeah, it's the most rewarding thing. I love it so much. And so like branching off from teaching voice to then teaching like music directing and things like that. It's just one of those things that I know some people are like, well, shouldn't you be on stage? You know, it's that moment. Well, shouldn't you be auditioning for everything instead of having a studio? Maybe, yes. However, you need a job,
right?
You know,
Yeah, this is also making me money.
Exactly,
So
you need a side job,
right.
And if I can avoid working at Starbucks in the morning,
Right.
before having to go to rehearsal or teach, and if I can have a studio that makes all the money that I need, I'm gonna do that, and I'm gonna do it proudly because I don't know if proudly is a word. I'm gonna do it proudly. There we go.
Yeah, there you go.
And know that I'm making an impact in these students. At the same time, I'm also learning just as much just by teaching them, right? I talked about this before. I could not mix like a mixed voice in college at all. It wasn't until my senior year that I really, it clicked a little bit, but it wasn't until I literally was teaching a student how to mix, and then it clicked for me. I was like, hang on a second. And I literally tried it, and I was like, I did it. And they were like, you didn't do it before? I was like, no, I didn't actually. They were like, but you've been teaching me, and I got it. I was like, yeah, I know. I understood the science of it. I understood how to teach it to you. I understood what makes sense for you as an individual to learn it, because every student is different in how they learn. However, it didn't click until that moment.
And just to clarify, mixing is a mix between belt and chest voice?
Head voice.
Head voice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A belt and head voice. Yeah. It's just more of a forward mixy sound than a super loud or soprano-y sound. And it's what you kind of want to aim for a theater sound more than anything. Obviously there's belting. However, the music that's being produced right now, the Broadway shows that are being produced, are mostly all mixed sounds. So if you're really struggling with that, it's so hard to keep going and booking things. So no, I am thankful to be teaching. It's one of those things that, I never thought I would become a teacher ever. I have never been good at talking ever, and I had a lisp when growing up, and it's just one of the things that I didn't expect ever to teach, but I do, and I love it with all of my heart. So
that's fun. Yeah, I never, as a kid, at some point I did want to be a teacher. It was like zookeeper then teacher. But then after my mother passed, I came across a need for a job, as people do, and I knew I had been swimming for a very long time, and I saw this one job. It was just teaching people how to swim, or kids, and it is one of the most rewarding things I've ever done in my entire life. Yep. Because you have these kids who come in who can barely, like, if they come in the water, they're without help, they're gone.
Yeah.
Nothing. There's no help, and then seeing them develop from that into realizing, hey, I can float by myself now. I can actually jump in the water, go onto my back, and be completely fine and comfortable. And some of these kids were like gripping onto me for dear life. Whenever I took them into the water, some people were crying to no end, and they were now they're completely fine, and they can now they're going underwater without freaking out and coming back up.
Yep. It's so rewarding.
It is so rewarding.
Yep.
I'm curious as to what are the essential things in a vocal studio? 'Cause I've never really been in one.
Yeah. So what I really focus on normally is, I've talked about like a strong foundation. So we want to have a strong vocal health foundation. So I am all about vocal health and finding the tricks and magic that work just for that student, right? I, as a teacher, learn how they learn, what works for them, and every lesson is going to be different, because everyone learns differently, right? Things aren't going to click the same with everybody, and so I a lot of times focus on, or you want like the structure of a lesson, or just in
Well, I was more curious about the But yeah, I guess curriculum wise, yeah, that would be interesting because for my voice lessons,
Mm-hmm.
it was more about exercises than actual performing. If
Yeah,
that
for
or
sure.
because as a composer, I wanted to learn or instruct my singers how to
Yeah.
sing better
Yeah.
or get the sound that I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
So that was more of a specialized thing, more than just working on my voice, even though that was part of it
Mm-hmm.
because I wanted to be able to sing better. But I'm so what you're saying is that most of the work goes into learning the person
Yeah.
and being able to take care of their health and maybe rehabilitating their voice in some
Mm-hmm.
aspects.
Just focusing on if they want to sing for a long time, focusing on the things that's going to give them the longevity that they need. The tricks and magic that helps them sing for a long time without pain, without being sore, without being finding this perfect spot that they can sing a whole show and be like, that was really great. I didn't struggle at all, you know? Um, so we really do focus on, obviously, we focus on different repertoire, and they sing a song at least usually once a week. And we'll focus on usually the same song, like 2 lessons or something, unless it's really good. And then I'm like, no, let's keep going. But the most of the time is warm ups. It's foundational things that is going to get them to know their voice
Mm-hmm.
completely, inside and out, know how their voice works, how they work, and that's going to in the end produce more of a better sound than anything because they fully know their voice.
Mm-hmm. So, what's one of your favorite exercises?
Oh. Um so something my breathing in general is my favorite thing to focus on, and when kids
Breathing is fun.
um learn how to breathe correctly from their diaphragm, they're
Mm.
like, "Whoa." Like every time. So I have this exercise that I actually learned from my voice teacher, Christian Brewer, and where you put your hands on your side and you bend down at the waist and you take a breath. And it when you're bent down at the waist, the only way you can breathe is from your diaphragm.
Oh, really?
You can only breathe that way. So if you are bent down at the waist and you're breathing like that and you're memorizing that feeling, right, over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I literally have them warm up like they're bent over. They're like, "Oh my gosh, Britt, come on." However, memorizing that feeling and then coming up and being like, "Whoa, like there it is. Now I've
Mm-hmm.
connected everything, and I'm not tightening everything up here. I'm not trying to focus on my chest. Everything is from here." I always talk about like an ab workout.
Mm.
It literally breathing when you're singing is literally like having an ab workout.
Yes, it is.
And if you focus on that, then you don't have to focus so much on exactly what's happening up here, right?
Right.
It becomes more natural because you're doing the work down here, that the things will naturally fall into place because you have a strong foundation. This will all just fall into place then.
It's incredible. So I've been singing for a very long time, doing a cappella, choir work, whatever. And the diaphragm thing was something that was kind of really pushed onto us. And it's always because there's some of these people who are like, well, how long can you hold your breath, or how long can you like do that
Yeah.
thing for it?
Yeah,
And
stink, yeah.
yeah. And it's always funny because I have a really good sense of like a diaphragm,
Mm-hmm.
and I can get really big breaths, and it's always been a funny thing for people who don't know what the diaphragm is and only breathe from their chest.
Yeah.
It's always funny to see the reactions of how long I can just
Yep, exactly.
forever and ever and ever. And but one of the other things is that it's much more freeing to your throat because if you use your lungs, you have to kind of constrict to push that air out
Mm-hmm.
more. Whereas if you have the support from the diaphragm, that all that air is already in you, and you don't have to constrict to increase the airflow.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to push down here harder.
Yeah.
Which is an insane concept to people who have never used their diaphragm ever before.
Mm-hmm.
We had to do this for a few people at the pool that I work at because it's a big space. There's lots of kids, sometimes 50 at a time, and you have to shout all the way at the end of the pool, "All right, ready, set, go." And some of these people don't have that loud of a voice, so
Mm-hmm.
it was kind of funny having to teach them That's an exercise I'm gonna take because that I've never thought about that one.
Yep.
Or never knew about that.
Yeah.
Um.
And it's funny because even as kids, it just connects in your brain. You know how like you'll be running and running and running, and the first thing you do is you bend at the waist. You're like, oh, and you like try to get a breath.
Oh
It's
yeah,
because
yeah.
your body knows that is the biggest, deepest breath you're gonna get. Your body literally knows that's the only reason and the only way you can get a deep breath.
That's wild.
I know, it's crazy that your body just automatically does that, and that's how we're supposed to breathe for singing, and your body just will automatically do it. So when it clicks in students, it's like, yes, exactly. They're
That's
like,
wild.
why didn't that click before? And I'm like, because your body was tricking you.
Yeah,
Like,
it was already doing
it was already
You just-
doing
yeah,
it. You just were
didn't
stopping
know.
it at that point because singing, people think it's different. It's not. Yep.
Oh, that's so wild.
Yep, it's crazy.
So you have what's your age range for students?
Yeah, so my youngest is 6 right now. Currently, my oldest is 22, 21. And I had two 50-year-old women I was teaching for a while. I personally try to not teach guys
You want to talk
over
about why that
yeah
is?
over the age of 19.
Mm.
Only because guys' voices are completely different after that age. Obviously, their voices change way earlier than that, and girls' voices change too. However, theirs is more sudden. And then as they're getting older, their voices develop even more after that. So I, as you know, a woman, don't understand their voice as much after that. I would love to eventually. It's just not something that I feel like I can give as a teacher at this
Right.
point yet. So I don't take guy students after like 19 years old, and I have like 6 boy students right now that are all under 18. And I've literally said like, well, if you want to, I have one who just turned 18. I was like, well, I will give you a list of guy voice teachers in the area who are incredible, and I think it'll let you have this strong foundation of singing, and the science of singing, the science of your voice, your voice well. However, now you have to build it up, and I'm not the person for that. I think you should go find a guy for that. And that, as a voice teacher and a teacher in general, is so important, not to have this like, well, they're my student. How
Right.
dare I like have to push that I want them forever? No, that student is gonna grow by learning from someone else.
Yeah.
And it's so cool. Like I had, a voice teacher my first 4 years of college, and then my last year I had a different voice teacher, and I learned just as much from both of them, obviously, but like just learning new aspects or more different perspectives helps so much.
The amount of different phraseology
Yes.
you can have, different ways of explaining things, is super helpful.
Yep.
And you're right. You shouldn't ever want to, because at some point it's time to let go of a student.
Oh yeah.
And because they can't learn anything more from you,
Yes.
and you have to let them go
Yes.
on and grow.
And there's some teachers I've met that are prideful in the sense of they're like, well, I should be able to teach them, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, you're wasting their money then.
Yes.
And you're wasting their time
Right.
just because you're being prideful of it. Like,
Right.
let go of the fact that you've taught them what you know.
And be prideful of that.
Yes, be
Yeah.
proud of that. But don't be prideful in the sense of that you can't let them go.
Right.
And to learn more,
They're not yours.
Yeah, exactly.
So what is the differences between teaching kids and then teaching a more developed voice past like puberty? What are
Yeah.
the different aspects of?
The foundation is the same. Younger voices from like 6 to 10 is more about matching pitch than anything, matching sound, repeating. I do a lot of repeating sounds. Students that young can't look at a piece of music and try to figure it out.
Right.
Obviously, we focus on a side of theory in lessons, and I always try to say, okay, this is your song. This is, they repeat after me. They repeat the notes or whatever. But I explain the theory side as well. So even if it doesn't click in the moment, years later,
Setting them up.
it's setting them up for success. Even by just slowly introducing them to little things, it's setting them up for success.
And especially as kids, it's when we take in all the information and
Yes.
we keep it then.
Exactly. And if you, as a teacher, just keep throwing little bits of information, it's going to stay with them. And you have no idea. And which is why teachers have such an impact and can also have such a bad impact
Right.
if they're not in a great place in, you know, in their own personal life, if they're not teaching well, and if they're yeah.
You have to interact with kids on a completely different level than adults, because the smallest things will impact a child for the rest of their life. One loud word, one not saying goodbye, one
Yes.
one not hug is gonna shape them. And you never know who it's from. Maybe it's granted, parents, it's a larger thing for parents
Right.
that have to worry about it, but even strangers or teachers, if are they gonna hate learning because this one time they were yelled at because they did something, you know, like what a child would do?
Yes. Yep.
It's so important to realize that you're not dealing with an adult. You're dealing with a very impressionable child who is going to take these experiences with the rest and have them subconsciously in their brain for the rest of their life.
Forever. Yep. Something I tell my students all the time is that this is a safe place. You know, every lesson is a safe place for you. Some lessons literally turn, my one student was like, sometimes I think this is therapy. This is more than singing. I was like, well, you know, music therapy is a thing. And there's a beauty in that. You know, you get so connected to your teacher because singing is such a vulnerable thing. And your voice is such a vulnerable thing. We can learn an instrument. And I feel like there's this weird thing that people expect voices to be this, you know, pitch perfect, great voice. And then someone learning to play the trumpet, they're like, oh, well, it's so hard. So you have to like, it's okay if they mess up. It's just an instrument. Versus this thing that's part of you that you physically can't change, right? You can grow. You have to adapt to it, but you can't physically change it. So there's this stigmatism, I guess, of like, well, their voice isn't perfect. I'm like, well, it can.
It can be better. It's not like that's what you're stuck with.
Yes, exactly. So if you are willing to step into a safe place with a teacher that you connect with, some teachers you're not going to connect with, and that's okay. If you step into a safe place that you're going to connect with this teacher and be willing to mess up. I always say, I was like, your voice is going to crack, my voice is going to crack. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to be like, do this, and my voice is going to crack, and that's just going to be what it is. I'm not going to be embarrassed about it. I'm going to be, you know, there's going to be days I've voice cracked in shows I've been, you know, there's going to be days professionals do. There's just so many times. Your voice is ever growing and it's ever changing. Every day your voice is different depending on the weather, depending on your health.
Yep, depending on how much sleep you got.
Exactly. Food, water. Like there are so many things that your voice is the most tedious thing. And if you're dependent on that for your job, you have to know yourself and what works for you, right? So I always tell my students, this is a safe place, but you have to be willing to mess up or you're never going to succeed and you're never going to learn unless you just go for it. And you're like, well, my voice cracked there, but did you hear the note before that?
Right,
Because that was amazing. You know, like being proud, even if it's not perfect, is something.
Small victories.
Yes, that eventually turn into huge victories,
ones,
but you have to let yourself have failures in order to have those huge victories.
And that was one thing I was really scared about going to Jeffrey Martin about because I'm not a singer.
Yeah.
Even though I don't know if you knew this, but I performed in Shrek. I was Shrek the musical. And other musicals. So I had thought that I was a good singer, but I think that's just a small town high school struggling to find people. So I was, and there was this kind of, people looked at me like, you're not that good. And I didn't think I was all that, but I was getting all this positive reinforcements, I guess, and being egotistical kind of maybe, but I was never like, you're bad. Never like that. But it was just always like confidence. And then slowly people were like I heard whispers, and just people looked at me with disdain, and I'm like, oh, okay. So I'm always scared to make mistakes or sing in front of people. Even to this day, when I go out and gig, people are like, play one of your songs. I'm like, nope, not gonna happen.
Yep.
Maybe everybody could buy a drink first, and then I'll sing.
Yep. That'll be helpful. Yeah.
Yeah. So one thing I do want to go get back into is
Mhm.
doing voice lessons, and because I do want to sing. I want to be able to produce my own songs without using voice pitch or not autocorrect pitch correction.
Mhm.
But everybody's gonna need a little pitch correction, but not to the point where it's like when I sing, I'm either like a minor second or a major second off.
Mhm.
So it's like those small things, but
Yep.
it's or like cents off. So
Hmm.
I can sing on pitch. It's just I want to be able to do it consistently and have really good intonation
Yep.
because that's the problem.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah, I have a student who sings a third out of every. I like play one note and he sings the third above it every time. And so something we've been doing is sliding with the note. So I'll play something and I'm like, okay, you're a little too high right now. Slide the note down. Slide it down. And immediately he goes right to the root of the chord. And I'm like, okay, so in your brain before you sing, you have to think about sliding
audition
down.
or okay.
Like immediately he just goes, and then he's right on pitch. It's
Mm.
so weird that his brain just wants to like be
A
just a
little
little
higher.
above it, but if he immediately thinks about going down, it's fine. And then it becomes second nature. Like I was like, you have to work hard in the moment for something to become second nature, which is crazy.
It's like tuning a voice.
Yeah, it literally is. Yep. That's just what we're doing.
That's funny. It's constantly singing harmony.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, sometimes I'm like, we can harmonize right now.
Right. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
We so what is kind of related to this topic
Mhm.
is how to be professional and separate being professional from being real. For
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
Because there's always that push of like, okay, I'm a professional. However, there needs to be a time for vulnerability, or there needs to be a time to just level on you from a person to
Yeah.
person. How do you? And that's in theater too, because when you go to an audition, you're professional time.
Mhm.
But when you're in, if you've got the job, and now that you're actually in it, at that point it's more of a relaxed
Mhm.
interpersonal.
Get a little crazy. Yeah.
Yep, get a little
Mhm.
crazy.
Comfortable. Yeah.
What's the mindset you have to go with when you're professional, and at what point do you make that switch? For
Mm.
granted, for musical theater it's a bit different because
Yeah.
you go in professional and then once you got it you can relax. But for a child, it's probably a lot different. You have to be professional to a point, and then they come up with you and ask you a serious question, and you're like,
Mm.
okay, now I have to choose whether I want to give the professional answer or level on them for real
Interesting. So like as a teacher.
as a teacher.
Okay.
Have you ever experienced that?
Um yes and no. I'm pretty we talked about this before. I'm a pretty blunt person.
Right.
And I tend to just be level with people in general. It's something I work on, obviously, and there's a time and place for that. There are some students that need more of a blunt attitude and need more of someone just being completely honest with them. And there's some that just need the encouragement. Obviously, I'm always going to challenge someone and challenge a student, but it just really depends on the student. I've never really struggled with finding the balance between professional and being real. The academy that I grew up in, we were just we had a solid foundation in being professional, but still being yourself. And I'm so, so grateful for it because it literally has followed me through even to this day. Someone in SpongeBob the other day was like, I feel like you are so cool, but you know how to just go right back into like being professional in a moment. I was like, it's just what I grew up with. Like,
Right.
yeah, it's like it's just kind of built into me now. It's just second nature. But yeah, it's just finding those weird balances between, okay, in this moment I have to be professional and quiet and blah blah blah, but I'm still myself in those moments, and yeah, it's very odd.
It is very interesting. What is one mistake that you have seen? Is there a trend of for your students, like a mistake that students have constantly made that you've noticed?
Ooh, good question. Hmm. honestly, I would say trying too hard. Um,
Like pushing your vocal
y-
too much, or
moving your mouth too much, which sounds crazy because you're trying to like the sound obviously comes out of your mouth. However, something my voice teacher used to say was like you're doing Olympics with your mouth right now. You're doing Olympics with your mouth. If you, she was like, your mouth is too wide right now. Your mouth is too like there's so many students who are trying to like get it out so much that they're actually doing the opposite, and your mouth really
You're
doesn't have.
straining.
Yeah, they're straining it. Your mouth doesn't have to be that open for that note, right? And then your tongue is there and can hinder you and working on tongue tension and things like that. And not obvious masks really did not help that. There are so many students after COVID, even me, that I struggled so much because I've never struggled with jaw tension or tongue tension until I started wearing masks all the time. And then singing, I was like, I don't know why I feel so tight now. And someone was like, it's because you have something on your face the whole time.
constraining
And
your
yes, yeah. So it took a long time for me and students to kind of get out of that mindset. But yeah, that's probably the biggest thing is people really just try so hard to just leave their mouth open and like try to like work it too hard. I'm like, no, you need to relax. More than anything, you need to relax. The notes are going to come out because you're using your diaphragm and because you're using your breath to get them out. It's all about the breath. I literally tell my students all that. It's all about the breath.
Yes.
That's it. And then we fine tune it.
Right.
But if you're using the breath to push it out, that's it.
That's the root.
Yeah.
That is the root. So you talked about wearing masks. What was it like to run your studio and do theater within COVID? Did everything shut down, or did you guys try Zoom, or what happened?
So I was teaching at Menchie Music at that point. I don't anymore just because my my own studio is too big. And I didn't want to like balance it anymore. But right before the pandemic happened, I was a full-time student and I had a full studio, and I didn't mean for it to be like that, and I was kind of overwhelmed by it. But I was making good money and I was really thankful for it. And then the pandemic hit and I lost all of, like, I think I went from having 22 students to having 4. It was insane, and financially it was like crushing.
Right.
And there was many students who we tried the Zoom for a while. I had 2 autistic students that they were like they wanted to keep studying, but the Zoom did not work for them. And then there was just students that their parents were like, they had bad Wi-Fi, and it'd be like, why are we paying for something that the Wi-Fi is affecting this? And I'd be like, no, I understand. Like I'm not gonna make you pay for something and make you feel bad for not doing something that is so annoying, you know? No. So I ended up only teaching 1 student consistently throughout the whole pandemic. And then my studio really did not grow back up after for a long, long time. And it was very frustrating. I was thankful because my schedule was more open for school, but financially and just in general, I was really disappointed by it because I was thriving, and then it was like crushed. But everything happens for a reason, and wearing masks then to teach was weird. Obviously in college, then we had to wear masks to sing, and shields, and learn how to do a show with a shield. And even outside of college, like I've done shows with shields now, and the sound quality is off and different
in all
and
sorts of ways. You're hearing yourself way louder than you ever wanted to.
Oh yes, and you're like, why do I sound like this? And
Right.
who allowed me ever to sing because I
Right.
sound like this? Exactly. Yep. So it was a lot, I will say. I definitely got so frustrated at times teaching throughout the pandemic, and just at one point I stopped Zoom. Menchie didn't open for a long time after everything was opened. And I said, I'm not doing this anymore. I need to be in person teaching at this point. So
yeah, I feel like I'm so happy LBC decided to do in person, because with music there's absolutely no way
yep.
you can do music with Zoom. It's not happening. the choir, the chorale meetings we had, trying to
Yes.
when we did that concert through Zoom, it was a nightmare and a half.
Yep.
And you lose all the personal stuff too, because I feel like as a musician, you have to be in person in order to get a real experience of being in college and growing in music.
Mm.
So I was really happy, especially as a music composition major who needs people to perform the pieces.
Yes. Yes.
Trying to figure that out from my recital was wild. But I'm so grateful that LBC decided to. Yes, we had masks, but you know what? The ability to be in person was so much more than what it could have been.
Yes.
So, few last things. I think we're wrapping up a little bit. What is one of the worst things that has ever happened to you on stage, like a blunder or anything like that?
I'm just going to share what happened this past Friday. So I was being Sandy, and I had never, there's one scene. Now, Sandy Cheeks is like a karate. She loves karate,
Mhm.
you know, SpongeBob. And she has nunchucks. I don't know if it's nunchucks in the one scene where she like does this really like sad monologue where she goes, talking about how she was always like, no one knew what to do with the girl squirrel who was into science and martial arts. And then she like pulls them out of her pocket and goes, Kwacha! And like then puts them back in. And then, well, I guess it's time now. And like it's supposed to be really funny and cartoony.
Right.
However, I had never practiced with the nunchucks ever. And I didn't think they were like heavy and like
Oh yeah.
real. And so I was just feeling really excited in that moment, apparently. And I pulled them out of my pocket, went like this. And I remember in the moment feeling like, how do I get this to stop swinging? Like, I don't know what to do.
Like, I've started.
Yes. And I remember the SpongeBob and Patrick were just like, look at me a second. And then I like stopped the momentum and it went and hit me right.
Oh.
It like smacked my left eye. And when I say it like whipped my left eye, I felt like I blacked out for a second. I could not see out of my left eye for the remainder of the act. We were 3 songs before the intermission started, and I never left, like we barely left the stage. There was one point where we like left and came right back on, and they were like, are you okay? Like, what's going on? I thought that my eye immediately, like I had like fake eyelashes on, obviously, and I thought they like came off because the SpongeBob like looked at me weird, and I was like, either my eye is like bleeding right now or like my eyelashes off. I don't know, but I'm gonna keep going. I could not see out of my left eye at all.
That's wild.
I was in so much pain. My head immediately like hurt. We were worried about a concussion. It was so bad. I immediately, when I went in the back, they shined a light. I even now have this like red spot that it immediately burst a blood vessel in my eye. Up here is completely bruised. It's so bad. I felt so embarrassed too because I was like, I heard my mom gasp from the audience. Apparently some people didn't see it, but when it happened, I like stopped a second and like apparently my mom went, and I knew it was my mom gasping because I could tell it was her. I was like, Mom. No. Yep. So that was honestly, I've done shows with fevers. I've done show with the flu before. There's so many things that like I've done shows in pain. But that was probably the worst thing to happen just because it was like I was already an understudy, so I didn't feel, you don't feel 100% confident ever because you're an understudy. The shows went so well, but after that I just felt like off my game and like everyone I know came for. Yes, I was like I don't know. So they like threw an ice pack on my eye, at intermission and gave me a lot of medicine, and I did the rest of the show, which is fine, but my eye still honestly hurts a lot. So, but it's okay. Finish the weekend.
And you don't
the
have
show
concussion.
must go on.
Yeah.
I don't think I do. I really didn't get it checked out, not gonna lie, but yeah.
I feel like you would know.
Yeah, hopefully.
Concussions.
I've had a concussion before, so it didn't feel like that too much, but
right.
Who knows? My
Who
eye's
knows?
just severely bruised.
That's
Yep.
at least it didn't break anything, because
Yeah.
that would have been
Yes.
hard.
And I'm like, the understudy would need an understudy at that point. You
Right,
know?
yes.
Would not be good.
Not be good.
Yep.
One of the worst moments I've not really worst moments, but panicking moments was during Ruth, actually.
Okay.
Remember the scene where they come out on the boat,
Yes.
and remember when the curtain got
Yep.
stuck on the so
Yep.
I saw it and I caught it, and I'm literally there like trying to fight against this robotic boat, and I think it was Seth that was the boat. He was just like,
Yep. Yep.
and nobody realized this except for me and Brianna at the time. And I was holding on for dear life, trying to, because if it had kept going, this whole current would have fallen.
Yes. Also, the boat would have went into the orchestra.
That's correct. Yep.
We would have fallen into the orchestra. I remember sitting there, and I was like, Ruth was such like a emotional show, and we were sitting there like sobbing our eyes out. And then I remember, I think it was Delaney stopped completely out of character and said, "What are we gonna do right now? Because we're about to fall in the orchestra." Like, she said that out loud, and I was like, I don't know what to do. I don't know. Do we get out? Like, we literally were preparing ourselves to literally jump out of this boat. And then Brianna saved the day. So
Yeah, I was terrified. I was
Yep.
like, what do I do? I'm just a stagehand. I have a sprained ankle.
Yep, I
still.
remember. Yep.
And I'm holding this entire boat from going. I didn't know where the boat was. I was just
Yep.
holding on for dear life, because I didn't know what was happening out there. I thought the stage would collapse, and thank God for Brianna.
I know.
Who, with the most calm
Oh, I know.
demeanor.
I know. She said, done.
She was like the narrator at that point.
Yep.
While she's saying it, she just casually walks over, unclips the thing, and it's instant release. I'm like, okay, get back over here.
I know.
And I was like, what just happened?
I know.
Man?
It was crazy. Yeah, that was terrifying.
So, what is one thing that you know now that you would wish you had known when you had first started? This can be related to teaching, to music, to God, to anything. If you could go back in time and tell little Britt, blah, 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 what would it be?
My first thought would be that you never know how much of an impact you are on people. Ever. As a person, as a teacher, as an actress, anything, you never know what impact you're going to have on someone. So on days that you're not feeling the greatest and you're feeling a little selfish and things like that, the days that you can let go and say, it's not about me. None of it is about me. It's all about God, and how I can just show his love every single day. I think that is the most important thing ever for anyone.
That's one thing that has helped me get through so much depression. For those of you listening or who don't know me, I have one of these most ridiculous laughs ever heard. And
I was gonna include it in one of the clips after my senior recital, if I was gonna do a funny song, because there's a point where I hear your laugh, and I was gonna include it.
it was there. That's funny. Yeah, it's every even do you remember when Mike Block and Sandeep Das came over? Yeah, so some of these world-class musicians, I had gone to their concert and I had laughed at some of their jokes, and then they were in a master class the next day at our school and made the same jokes, and I just laughed the same, and they're like, who was that?
Yep.
I know that laugh. And I
Yep.
was like, you didn't recognize by a laughter. And I realized that I have had such a positive effect on people, and it's part of the reason why I'm still here today. I've been going through deep depression and some serious stuff. And the only reason why I'm still around was because I realized that if I went, all of these other people would go too. And I couldn't keep myself. I don't want to say selfish, but I guess that's kind of what it is. I wasn't selfish enough to take that away from other people.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a very good one, to make sure to realize that you have an impact on people you would not ever have thought of,
Yep.
and you don't know how much you impact people. You could be the light of somebody's day,
Yep.
and not even know.
No idea.
You would have no clue whatsoever. Is there anything else you would like to talk about? The Brit thing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you had asked why I go by Britt. Um,
Some people use stage names. Some people.
yeah,
So I was
yeah.
just wondering if it was just something you had felt better as, and
So obviously my full name is Brittany. My parents call me Brittany Joy. That's just what they've always called me, and I love that. That as a whole, it's good. I like that. My family calls me Buppy, so like in my house, there's never really a Brittany. It's either
mhm.
Buppy, Britt, or Brittany Joy. Growing up, I went to public school for 2 years, and it was the worst 2 years of my life. Not really, but as a kid, it felt like the worst 2 years of my life, and I was bullied for being called Brittany. And as a little conservative Baptist girl at the time, they called me Britney Spears, and I
Mhm.
thought that was the worst thing in the entire world. You know, I was like, how dare you compare me to Britney Spears, you know, and call me Britney Spears. So,
For those who don't know, Britney Spears during that time she had a really controlling father, and now we know the full extent of the issues that Britney Spears went through. She had a really controlling father who would control every aspect of her life, and she didn't really have any control of her life. So what she decided to do was try to ruin that grip by freaking out, shaving her head, doing all these wild things to try and break out of being essentially a slave to her
mm-hmm,
dad.
yeah,
So but at that point we just thought there was a crazy person going crazy.
yep. So in my head, I was like, I don't want to be affiliated with that at all,
Mhm.
you know? So it was the worst, and to me at least. And then once it wasn't until I still, like, I would get nervous and like panicky every time my name had to be called, like someone would say Brittany, and I would hate it. It would like
Mhm.
my soul would be crushed. And I didn't like that because my parents named me.
Right.
My great grandma's from England, so they named me Brittany because of like Brittany. So that's and so I was like, I should be proud of that. It's my, heritage. And she was like, we're very similar apparently. So I should be proud of that, but I wasn't. And then it was until I think end of high school, beginning of college, that I was like, I don't want to be called Brittany all the time. Like I just don't. And some people had called me Brit or Brit sometimes, and I was like, I honestly think I prefer that. Um, and so I think it was like the second year of college, first year of college, that I just started writing Brit on everything. I changed my Facebook to Brit. I changed things. We talked about stage names, so I was like, people just probably assume it's
Right.
that, you
Yeah.
know? And I can get away with it. And now everyone calls me Brit, and it's great. So, however, I have grown a lot, and I don't really have like if people call me Brittany, I'm like, hey, like it's okay.
Right.
It's weird though because some people will be like, hey, Brittany, and I don't answer right away. Like I'm
Yeah.
like, what? Like, yep, they said it at they were like, Brittany, can you do your mic check? And I was like, did they say Brittany? I was like, who? They mean me? Like, okay, cool. Yeah, and it's like, yeah, it's fine now, but it was just one of those things that people were like, I had considered going by my middle name, Joy, um, but everyone was like, no, please don't do that. I was
Right.
like,
Yeah.
that's a lot of difference. And like, some people, do that, and that's
Mhm.
great for them, but I just felt like a identity crisis. So I just was like, Brit's good. Brit's fine. Yep, that's that.
Well, Britt, it's been wonderful having you on the show.
Yes, this has been awesome. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for having me.
They can find you on your Instagram.
Yep.
And do you have any upcoming performances?
We have one more weekend of Spongebob the Musical.
And that's where.
It's at Collegium Charter School in Exton, PA,
Mm.
through Revival Productions. So if you go to revivalperformingarts.com, you can get tickets there. It's not at their building; it's at another building that's like 12 minutes from there. And yeah, that's ending, and then
Do you have any upcoming shows after that?
I will be in Ragtime with Servant Stage
Ragtime? Oh, yeah,
in the
they were doing
fall.
Ragtime.
I will be doing a lot of summer camps, music directing a lot of summer camps this summer, which I'm super excited for. And I'm actually co-directing. So Servant Stage has a program kind of like a conservatory for kids that want to pursue theater a little bit more seriously. So they have their junior co, app co, and teen co, and it's like the 3 levels that go up. Or they just like focus on different things. And so actually Richard Thomas and I are both the directors of Youth Co right now. We just started last week, and every Monday night we have a 3-hour class that we have a group of like 10 students that we will have for the whole summer, and then we'll do like a showcase at the end, and we have like a syllabus, and yeah, it's super fun. So that's kind of what I'm doing.
I thought of one last question.
Sure, go ahead.
What advice would you give to parents of children who want to seek theater?
That's awesome. Wow.
It's a interesting one. Like, would you like encourage them to have them do it? Would you?
I think they should try it. If they love it, they love it. There are some people that consistently do theater as a hobby. You know, like there are professional theater actors in the area that are EPAC, Fulton, that didn't go to school for it. It's just their hobby, but they just, for some reason, they loved it so much that they just kept pursuing it. They have their side job, you know, they work at their do some taxes or their whatever they do, but they love it. So they made sure that they did the work and that they can do it. So if they love it, let them go for it. They're going to realize if they want it to be a hobby and if they want it to be their life. There is a moment in a teacher's life, in a parent's life, where you have to be like, hey, I don't think this is for you. You know, there is a moment for that. However, because sometimes dreams can get in the way of reality, right? However, as a student, if they love it, have them do it. Now is the time to try things new.
As a kid, yeah.
As a kid, try things new. No matter what, they're not wasting their time, because theater, you learn so much about yourself and about life, others,
so much social interaction,
that it is so worth it, no matter what. So just go for it. Don't hold them back. Don't push them if they're really good to be like, okay, go to college for it. You know, don't push them or force them to do it in the end.
Don't turn them into a regretful prodigy.
Yes, exactly. However, they need to love it to keep going with it, especially the kid. But just go for it.
All right. Well, with that said, this has been Corey Rosen with the Story Podcast with Britt Jarkowsky. Thank you guys for staying with us, and I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.
Bye.